Today on the Criss Cinema Podcast, two vastly different medieval comedies, but with oddly more similarities than you'd think. Monty Python and the Holy Grail and Princess Bride on the Criss Cinema Podcast.
Two fellows meet accidentally, like you and me. No connection between them at all, never saw each other before. They swap murders. Criss-cross.
Wilson! I'm sorry, Wilson! A day may come when the courage of men fails, but it is not this day.
You gotta keep breathing, because tomorrow the sun will rise. Who knows what the tide could bring?
Hello and welcome to the Criss Cinema Podcast, where we crisscross cinema history to find connections that elude the casual eye. Try and spot them along with us. Today, a tale of true love and a tale of true nonsense, with 1975's Monty Python and the Holy Grail and 1987's The Princess Bride. Hi, I'm Aaron Wilson, a lifelong Monty Python fan.
And I'm Mark Klobus, a historian who is not AJP Taylor.
And I'm Belia Mucada, 2024, 2025, Miss Channel Latina, and actress, and lifelong fan of The Princess Bride.
Cool. Okay, if you'd like to get access to bonus features and deleted scenes from Criss and our sister show, Facets of Story, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/transcendentertainment. That's TRANSCEND Entertainment. Today, just as always, we'll review our two films and then we go crisscross to compare and contrast. But first, Mark, what have you been watching?
Well, I recently saw The Fall Guy in the theater, which was a very entertaining movie, but I have to say it illustrates the point that a lot of people have been making lately. Films today are just too long. That should have been a tight 90. It would have been much better if it had been. Instead, it was a little bloated. And while I appreciate it's a film about stunts, those stunt sequences went for a little bit longer than they should have. Yeah. It was like it reaches a crescendo, then it gets another crescendo, and then it gets another crescendo. It's like, oh gosh! At this point, I'm doing what nobody watching a stunt movie should be doing, which is just checking my phone to see what time it is.
There's definitely a thing with action movies, particularly like Michael Bay movies are horrible at this. Like all the Transformers movies just go on and on and on. It's a Hitchcock thing where you need to release the tension.
Yes.
And it like you've got to refresh the audience after a little bit and then go back into another tense scene. So.
Really? I always like the Transformer movies.
I don't know. The first one I wasn't able to get through just because it's I don't know. They just keep laying it on and there's no release of the tension. But
I see.
Anyway.
Now, the other thing I've been watching, by the way, and this is totally coincidental, is I've been going back and watching the old Columbos. And I had seen the ones from the 70s, but I discovered recently on streaming both the first two movies that Peter Falk did, the TV movies, The Prescription Murder and I can't remember what the other one's called, and then the one he did with Lee Grant, and then the ones from the 80s, which aren't as good as they were during the 1970s. But man, that Peter Falk was truly amazing. I did not appreciate how esteemed of an actor he was. He was the first actor I read who was nominated for both an Oscar and an Emmy in the same year, and he did that in I believe it was 2 years in a row. Mm-hmm. Which was something that, because he's so iconically associated now with either Columbo or the grandfather role. And nowadays, that's who you think of as, and he had so much more range and such a great esteem, which I think is one of the reasons why he was able to hook in all these amazing actors that he worked with in those movies.
Yeah.
So
you might have to enlighten me on Columbo. What is that?
Columbo was a detective character that originated in a play in the late 50s, and they did a TV movie with it. But in the late 60s, Peter Falk starts to do it, and he becomes this very iconic figure. He has this rumpled trench coat. He has this very unassuming demeanor. There's also this fascinating class element to it, where the approach to the mystery is very different. They're mysteries, but the mystery isn't who done it. Mm-hmm. The mystery is getting away with it. So what you do in all of these is you see the crime being committed. So you know who the guilty party is. You know how they are staging it. And these things are structured in such a way to where you have these very clever criminals who are committing the crime.
It's more of a butting of heads with him and the criminal type thing. And
sometimes it's not even. It's like 30 minutes into these TV movies. They were all TV movies. It was not an episodic show format with like 30 minutes or an hour. It's only about maybe a third of the way in that Columbo shows up. Mm-hmm. And initially everyone's like, well, clearly this is, whatever the murderer had intended it to be interpreted as. And then Columbo shows up and he just kind of picks at it and picks at it and picks at it, and he just unravels the whole thing by the end of the movie. Usually it's the turn of this one particular detail that the murderer overlooked or wasn't able to address, and then Columbo finds it, and the murderer then just is like, shucks, I guess you got me, and marches. There's never like a big climactic shootout or where they're like, you'll never catch me alive, coppers. It's always the realization that Columbo has worn down the ruse and
yeah, and there's a very underdog element to it. Yes. He's like he said, he's got a very unassuming personality, and the villain is always the smartest of the smartest, and they're going to get away with it.
Yeah, it's like the first in Prescription Murder, it was this brilliant psychiatrist. In the second movie, it was this great lawyer, and that's throughout them. They're these heads of think tanks, or they're running these organizations, and they pull this stuff off, but they put so much thought into it, planning, and like I said, everyone but Columbo totally misses it. Mm-hmm. But Columbo, he's just got one more question, and Falk plays this character. He first does it in 1968. The last one he does is 2003. And so he plays the same character. It becomes increasingly plausible. It's just like, you would think retirement, he would have been retired decades before. But he like I said, he ropes in all these great actors. Mm-hmm. Not like the biggest names, but he has like Oscar-nominated actors like Lee Grant. He has this collection of actors he brings in, plays multiple roles. People like Robert Culp and Patrick McGowan, which apparently speak to the fact that Falk was a well-liked character in a well-liked figure in Hollywood, and had a bunch of friends, and he constantly employed them in these different roles throughout the 4+ decade run of the series. So
this is a stretch, but it sounds like a very big one solo act of a Scooby-Doo episode from the plot, what you're saying, at least. We're like, oh, I know who did it, and then it's just anticlimactic a bit.
Well, it boils the suspense, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong here.
It's definitely for suspense. The more you tell up front, the more suspense there is, because it's like it's that guy, you're gonna get him, and then I think especially with Columbo, it's more of a butting of heads thing of he knows he's the one who's done it, and the villain knows that he knows, and it's like, you're never going to prove it type thing.
Oh, okay. I'll have to watch something.
And then when they were doing this weekly series, the first episode they did was written by Steven Bochco, who becomes this huge figure in TV drama, and directed by this up-and-coming kid named Steven Spielberg.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And it's like he was 24 years old when he got the job, and you can already see a lot of the genius that he was going to exhibit over the course of his career.
I'll have to watch that.
So now that we're done talking about what have you been watching lately?
I have been watching the CW series of Gossip Girl. And I guess it was like 2007 era. Yeah. And just rewatching those from my youth, it's been pretty satisfying, and yet kind of like, how did we allow this to be aired? There's a couple things going on that I'm like, this is questionable. And also they're these rich teenagers in New York, and they're going to bars. Like, why did that make sense back then? But that's what I've been watching. And I think we kind of discussed about how the actors, some of them are British actors acting as American actors, and just seeing that, and then seeing them now as outside of that character that they used to be in. I'm curious as to what they're up to now, and some of their movies they're posting about their movies, and I'm interested to see them in their regular accent in their regular accent. So the only American actress that I've seen kind of fulfill that role, well, there's two. I would say Vanessa Hudgens slightly. There were moments in her Christmas movies that were a little you could tell this is a little American. But Emma Stone in her recent movie, have you guys heard of it?
You're talking about Americans doing British accents?
Yeah.
Which one is it?
Emma Stone. It's the
Poor Things.
Poor Things. Yes.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it. No.
It's a pretty good movie. It's a very awkward movie, but she does a really good English accent.
Of course, there's always Meryl Streep.
Oh yes, that's
who
true.
Just is so amazing at it.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean they're the ones that kind of give me hope that the British have not monopolized the mastery of accents, because when Kevin Costner tries to pull one out, you're like, oh my god.
Kevin Costner doesn't even try.
Well, he does kind of try in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but occasionally I think he forgets he's supposed to be doing it.
Yeah.
So,
but that's what I've been watching.
Aaron?
Yeah, so I've been watching Fallout, the new show that just came out. And I was watching it with my friend who's a big Fallout fan, and we had this ongoing joke of, it's just like the video game. Like, they're shooting people just like the video game. They're using forks just like the video game. and then it got to a scene where, this isn't much of a spoiler, but they're exploring another vault. And he's going through the computer and like seeing what happened there. And I'm like, okay, all jokes aside, this is exactly like the video game, because there's so many. Fallout is an open world game, so there's basically a whole bunch of different things that you can do, and there's usually a whole bunch of vaults where people hid underground from the explosions. And there's weird experiments that they did underground in them. Like one vault was one guy and 13 puppets, and he had made like this murder mystery with the puppets that you can figure out. And anyway, that's kind of the weirdest one. But there's the weird social experiments that they do in the vaults. But and then, so she gets out of the vault, and you're gonna have to remind me exactly the wording on this, but she's like, don't you know about the golden rule, to the ghoul who's the bad guy who's just doing nasty things. And he's like, there's only one golden rule in the wasteland, and it's
he who has the gold makes the rules.
No, it's and it's
it's been a while since I've seen Fallout.
It's something like, you have to do a bunch of random crap to do before you do your thing. And I'm like, just like the video game. Anyway,
I really have to both admire and I'm in admiration as to how much goes into producing those IPs nowadays, because they appreciate, I think, in a way that you didn't have to in previous generations, how many fans are going to hold you to task for getting all the little stuff right. I think there's a time where you could kind of gloss over that, especially before the era of where you could pause it and study a frame
or
in
the
meticulous
internet.
detail. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And how you can really appreciate the ones who do the homework, who sit there and they make sure to get those details right, because they know that they will be judged for that. It's like people gloss over the acting, they'll gloss over the writing, but because they'll focus upon those details, and it's just it must be stressful.
Yeah, and there's one other thing that I really appreciated about it that gives the feel of the game. It's Fallout. You basically make your own character, and you can make it whatever you want. And then you just go out and adventure, and it's open world, so you can go anywhere, do anything. they created that feel by having 3 separate protagonists. There's Lucy, the vault lady, and then there's
The
ghoul, and then there's, I forget his name, but is it Maximus? Anyway, he's one of the knights he's wanting to become one of the knights that wears these armor things that walks through the wasteland.
A squire who is an aspiring knight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't seem connected at first, but then they bring it together, and it makes that feel of anything can happen. So anyway, it's a good show. So you're probably already watching it if you're interested.
But I have to say, and just to build upon that, I've not played a second of Fallout.
Yeah.
I have not quite gotten to the end, but I enjoyed it enormously. So you don't even have to be a fan of the show.
I've only seen the commercials of the Fallout game.
Just like always, we'll be diving deep. Fair warning, here there be spoilers. And now our review of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, 1975.
One of the fascinating things I find about this movie is that depending upon how you watch it, they keep adding to it. And the reason why is because the DVD version I have, they throw in an additional joke. So I'm going to skip over that because I'm going to start with where the movie traditionally starts, which is with these opening credits that very quickly set the tone. Where you could say it's Swedish subtitles or Danish subtitles, but the reality is it's Pythonese subtitles, where they're kind of doing this Scandinavian thing with umlauts and the O's with the slashes through them. But they're doing the credits, and the credits are largely legitimate. But you also have this very quick digression into how you need to go to Sweden because the mooses are in season. You just have to be careful not to get bitten because moose bites can be very nasty. And then you get, the interruption of the credits, and it just gets more and more surreal. And it does such a great job of giving you a sense from the start of here's what Python does.
And now for something completely different.
Exactly. And then you get to England 932 AD, which is in itself a joke because the legend of King Arthur is actually in the 6th century, I believe. So what you're seeing here is the equivalent of saying America in the 22nd century and then cutting to George Washington. I mean, it's 4 centuries out of date, and they know this. In fact, apparently they were throwing around all sorts of dates in the script writing process. So right there, you're getting a sense that this is not to be taken as anything approximating history.
Oh man!
And of course, this is underscored by the sound of you hear a lot of clip clopping, and it turns out it's not horses; it's someone clopping together hollow coconuts.
Thank you for explaining the first half of that, the subtitles, because there was a moment where my TV was, I don't know, I think it disconnected, but I had to glance at it, and then I didn't really realize that it said 1932 AD, and now that you're explaining, I was like, oh, okay, so then, with all those things going on, I was like, is this meant to happen?
Well, I mean, there's so much going on in the movie that is very historical. I mean, it's kind of like a goulash of the Middle Ages. So you have the insertion of a lot of ahistorical elements, and they're playing with what is basically almost a millennia of English history.
Yeah.
It's like having, George Washington flying a P-51 Mustang as he is, with Neil Armstrong as his co-pilot. It's kind of that over the top.
Mm-hmm. That explains the rest of the movie because there was questions I had.
Exactly. And again, it's not because...
Is this the first time you've seen it, Billy?
For the most part, this is the first time.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's different. It's probably an acquired taste, but I've been watching it since, and most people who've watched it watch it over and over again
that's how I feel about
being kids. But,
The Princess Bride. So
yeah, well, you'll have something to look forward to for that one. Yeah.
But yeah.
One of the things I really enjoyed about preparing for this is going back and reading about the preparations for this movie, because this was not their first movie. The first movie was called And Now for Something Completely Different. And it was a modest success, but they did not have the budgets to do this. This thing was under £1 million, which was under $1 million back then. Mm-hmm. And so when you see the Hall of Coconuts, it's a great joke, and it's one of the many jokes that recurs throughout the movie. They did that because they found they didn't have the budget for horses.
Yeah, there's a lot of really clever working within their means type thing of they've got the coconut horses, which becomes a joke, and then the very economical jokes using the credits, like so-and-so just was fired for doing the horrible credits or the horrible subtitles, and then the person who was just sacked was also sacked for sure. I can't remember. Anyway, anybody who's seen it knows what I'm talking about.
And then it's at great expense. We've at the last minute done these other concessions, and it goes from this very black and white credits of talking about Moose to this flashy Latino influence with talking about llamas. So
it's like red and yellow flashing.
Yeah, I think they refer to it in one of the scripts as kind of Mexican cantina style. So
yeah,
but you see in England in 932 a man, quote, riding through the English countryside with his squire, and the man is King Arthur, played by Python great Graham Chapman, who and his squire Patsy's played by another Python great Terry Gilliam, who is one of the co-directors.
Also the animator.
And the animator, and we actually see him in the animating role later in the movie. So they ride up to a castle to invite its master to join him, Arthur, at his court at Camelot, and only to get sidetracked by this discussion about swallows. And this is a very common Pythonism, which is the endless digression. And one of the things I love about this, and it's one of those things that rewatching the film really brings to light, is they call back to this scene throughout the movie. And there's a very famous point later in the movie where they do that, but you also pick up on it a couple other times. So it's like a digression that seems to be pointless, and yet it ends up becoming a running joke. And it's one there, if you're really paying attention or you watch it multiple times, you see it. I think one of the reasons why Python is...
There's a lot of things in this movie that repeat over.
Yes.
And that's great for comedy because it's like a callback, but it also plays the role of setup and payoff. And if you've done the setup, you can do as many payoffs as you want.
And it's one of those ones where it doesn't clobber you over the head with the payoffs.
Yeah.
But you really pick up on that later scene. But then you have additional journeying, and this is it's really fascinating what they're doing because you're getting a sense of the English society, and in one sense, it's supposed to be a sense of the Middle Ages. So you get the guy bring out your dead with the cart full of corpses, and then you get the confrontation between
just the Black Plague.
Yeah.
So,
again, which actually doesn't happen until the 14th century.
Yeah.
But again, we're not you're trying to do historical work here. But then you have the encounter between the king and Dennis, who is a member of an anarcho-syndicalist commune. This is the other element of film, and this is one of the things that Python was doing that unfortunately we don't appreciate as much anymore, which is that they're offering commentaries about England in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. You see this as well. I mean, it's very evident in the TV show. But you also see it in Life of Brian, famously with the discussion about the People's Front, Judean People's Front. That was a commentary about all the various terrorist groups of the 1970s. Here, when you have the encounter between Arthur and Dennis, it's a comment about English leftism in the 1970s, about how the labor movement was really kind of feeling its oats. And there's all talk about the kind of like the leftism of the student movement and how and a lot of that dialogue it comes across in this scene where Dennis is critiquing the whole notion of being under a monarchy, and it's not quite an endorsement of republicanism, but you could see the criticism of the very notion of it. This idea of
Monty Python has kind of that thing that The Simpsons has, where they just mock anybody and everybody.
Yes, they do.
And they I think the funny part about this part of it is kind of breaking down the joke makes it less funny, but just that he's discussing modern politics in the Middle Ages. Like this one guy knows the stuff, and it's like, you guys don't understand. We need to be doing blah, 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 blah. And anyway.
And you also get this great, you also see, I think, one of the things that makes this film as great as it is, which is Graham Chapman, who was a brilliant performer and comedian, how he is so good at playing a straight man. Because he's sitting here, he's trying to be the king. I am Arthur, king of the Britons.
Oh, okay.
and he's very, and Dennis is there. Well, you're king because some watery tart gave you a sword.
Exactly. That was funny.
And it's just really well done in terms of that. And then you go from that.
Well, okay, I got a note about this one.
Go ahead.
So there's, it's really interesting if you look at it first I think this is in the transition from the Bring Out Your Dead scene to this one. There's a lady like beating a cat on a thing, and it's like, meow, meow. So that is apparently a job in this universe.
Yes.
And apparently also muck piling or filth piling is a job, because they're just piling up mud. Like that's all they're doing in the scene.
Well, it's part of this wonderful satirization, and this is another running joke about how backwards we think of these people. Yeah. And you get that in a scene I was going to get to in a bit, which was where the knight Bedivere is performing a exercise in logic using the reasoning of the Middle Ages.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which is absolutely hilarious to us today, and heaven help what's going to happen 500 years down the road when they're mocking what we regard today as reason and logic. But
yeah, and I was watching this with my friend Michael, who I watched Fallout with, and he said that his science teacher used this as an example of the scientific method.
Yes,
like it's not completely scientific, but it shows the logic of how you come to a conclusion. And
I don't want to get to that just yet because
I was going to say, I was like, wait, I wanted to just cover the topic of where the king was walking past the muck. Yeah. And they're like, why isn't he covered? Or he has to be a king because he's not covered in crap.
And got crap all over him.
And then the part where I guess the king starts to assault the guy and he's like, look, he's repressing me.
Yeah, come see the violence inherent in the system. Come see the violence inherent in the system.
Yes.
That's one of the things. And this is one of the things that I know we're getting a little ahead of with the crisscross, but I mean, both these films are so eminently quotable.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Okay, so we're going to have problems when we get to Princess Bride, because all I have written down is just lines.
Literally.
Yeah.
They're all up here right now.
Yeah, and it's the same for Holy Grail. But you have this, but I didn't want to get quite to the scene with the witch yet, because you have the scene in between with the Black Knight.
Oh,
true.
And the thing I love about this scene with the Black Knight is that how they switch from this very pointed contemporary political commentary to this wonderful scene of physical humor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it is just so well done. And I read something that's very interesting. This is the scene where you have Richard Burton.
Who's that?
Well, Richard Burton was a very famous actor of the 20th century, but it's not the same Richard Burton. The actor who plays the Black Knight, it's John Cleese throughout most of the scene. Yeah. But when you get to the point where, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, where he is down to one limb, they found a silversmith who was one-legged.
Oh, okay.
And they had him play that, so it wasn't Cleese with his leg tied up.
There's a guy that was actually missing his limb. So,
hopping there with Cleese doing the voiceover, but you get to that scene where with the Black Knight, where you have this, you get the fight there. You see the Black Knight fighting someone, and the Black Knight wins, and he has the strength of many men. And then Arthur's impressed, like, come join me at Camelot, and the knight doesn't say anything, and he's going to cross the bridge, and that's when the Black Knight finally talks about none shall pass. And you're expecting it's going to be a real tough fight for Arthur, but lops off one limb. He's basically performing an amputation over
Just a scratch.
It's about a flesh wound. The inability to it's so cartoonish. It's like when you see these cartoon characters, you get full of bullets and like, you missed me, and then they drink water and the water comes pouring out of all holes.
Or it's like when you're a kid and you're playing guns with your brother, and it's like you shoot right at them and they're like, you didn't hit me, you missed.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he reduces them to a torso and a head. He was like, let's call it the draw.
Yeah.
But then that follows to where we see the scene with the knight Bedivere, played by Terry Jones, who is the other director of the movie.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Determining whether or not a woman is a witch. Now, the woman is played by Connie Booth, who was John Cleese's wife at the time. He tends to go through wives over the course of his life. But you have that wonderful exercise in quote logic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there is a logic to it. That's interesting. Like I'm going to divert just a little bit back to the weird jobs thing. So there's beating cats, there's piling filth, and then my favorite one. This is what I'd do if I were in the Monty Python and the Holy Grail universe: slapping water.
Yes.
Like I'm just going to mention it here because I don't know when it happens. It's just a in passing thing. They're like walking by a stream, and there's a guy just going. Whacking the water, like, what is he doing? Like, well, that would be my job. That's what I'm doing.
Well, my favorite of those has to be, and they're in the scene, the mendicants. They open the scene. They're the monks that are walking and they're chanting and then beating themselves in the head with the board of wood in unison.
Yeah,
which is
Jesu Domine, Doma is requiem. Yeah,
which again is just such a great satirization as to how we view the religious figures back then, all the weird things they would do, like wear hair shirts and whip themselves.
This is a weird comment, but my friend Michael asked if I knew why the monks like shave their head bald, like right on the crown, and I had no idea. Go ahead. Yeah, it's because they thought that the hair was blocking their prayers got to heaven better because they have the bald spot on their head.
Omniscient, omnipotent being is going to be blocked by
some hair follicles. Yeah.
So. But this is where, at the resolution of this, when we determined that the woman is a witch because she weighs as much as a duck,
Did you say fair cop or something?
She's a fair cop.
which is very much a contemporary Englishism of saying, well, you caught me. So, and of course it's one of the times where they break the fourth wall and do so very nicely. But this is how Arthur gets his first knight. And then, of course, we get, we quickly run through him getting all the other knights. And then we get Galahad.
Including Sir not appearing in this film.
Yes, exactly.
This is just the baby in the hood. You remember seeing that in the book? Yeah.
Oh, briefly, right? It was like a...
Yeah, it's just a blink and you'll miss it joke.
Yes.
And then we actually get to Camelot, and we have that wonderful song and dance sequence.
Yeah, there's a Lego version of this, which is amazing. Like...
Yeah, I literally learned about that today before we did this. So I was like, I got to see that afterward.
Yeah.
So, but then we were riding through the countryside, and then who makes an appearance but the Lord God himself?
Well, before that, there's a blink and you'll miss it thing of it's hard to quote any of this without there's several sections where you can quote back and forth, but these lines are so long. I didn't write down anything because anyway, but there's a tirade that Bedivere goes on about, don't you know that the earth is banana shaped? And so we've got some
it's right at the beginning of that scene.
Banana earthers over here.
Yes. And this new learning fascinates me, Sir Bedivere.
Yeah. And then right after it, that's a lead through from, who are you who are so wise in the ways of science?
I am Arthur, King of the Britons. And he's the first person who respects him in that role.
Yeah, it's true.
The soldiers of the castle don't. The peasants don't.
Yeah, I love that.
The Black Knight doesn't.
Yeah, that dynamic where he's just random wandering man, but he's supposedly the king of the land. And it's like, is he just a mental patient? Or...
And of course, the ones, it's like the people who will acknowledge him in his role are instantly promoted to knighthood and dubbed sir. And so, but we have them just riding through the countryside randomly. And then God makes an appearance, voiced by Graham Chapman. And I mean, this is one of my favorite scenes because I can totally appreciate the frustration God must feel with all these people. We're averting our eyes. Oh, stop that. Yeah. Oh, good idea, Lord. Of course it's a good idea.
Good idea, oh, Lord. Yeah. I was really... when I was a kid, I really didn't like this scene because I'm like, you don't. I'm trying to think of the word. I was, I guess, stodgy about it.
Yeah,
but it was really funny this time.
Sacrilegious.
Yeah, a little bit. A little. That's just the Monty Python thing. They mock everything and everything.
They really
anything. Do. So.
And the other thing I like about it is that it is a very blatant introduction of the MacGuffin.
Oh yeah,
because it's right there in the title. And yet this is one of the only 2 times in the entire movie that you actually see it.
Yeah, the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
MacGuffin.
Okay, so great point for me to say what a MacGuffin is. Yeah. There's going to be a Facets of Story episode on this in not too long, but MacGuffin is basically what they're going after. So like in this one, it's the Holy Grail, and there's a lot of movies where it's the Holy Grail. But so like Indiana Jones would be a great example.
Or the Maltese Falcon.
Yeah. There's always a MacGuffin in Indiana Jones movies. So the first one, it's the Lost Ark. The second one, it's, I guess, the Shankara stones, but that's kind of loose because they're not really looking for it. But the Holy Grail and the third one is perfect example. Like,
and the fourth one, it's the
Crystal Skull.
Yeah,
but they get it pretty early on. So.
Yeah. But it's and what they're doing here, and this is not something that they start with. I mean, Maltese Falcon is another great example where they don't actually see, spoiler here, they don't actually encounter the item or recover the item, but it drives the action.
Yeah, that's the point of the MacGuffin. It gives the story momentum and a direction, basically. They're all after, the good guys and the bad guys are all after the same thing. And then once you get it, it's kind of served its purpose. And even though it's been this cool thing you've been chasing, you have to throw it away at the end. So,
oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
The purpose it's serving, of course, being that it gives us this wonderful movie.
Yeah. Which, like, this is the clothesline that this movie hangs off of. Like, it's just a search for the Holy Grail. And now we've got a clothesline we can hang all these random skits off of, is basically the...
And that's also what it really is. It's just a collection of sketches, which is one of the things that makes it so brilliant, which is how they were able to take... They don't do it as effectively in, say, Meaning of Life, where it's more obvious what it is. But then again, I think at that point, they really weren't caring as much about it. But here, it's basically, we're going to take a set of characters, we're going to throw them in a variety of sketches, and we're going to make a movie out of it. And it's so nicely done.
Yeah. So. It shows how well a MacGuffin works. Like, it just, like, there's no more random group of comedy sketches than Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but it's got this linking thing of, oh, we're after the Holy Grail. And they're not always completely after that. They divert in a lot of places, but they're still in the back of your mind, oh, we're going after the Holy Grail. So you're not disoriented the whole time.
It's also great because how they can also use it to transition out of the sketches. And I'm thinking of later on Galahad, where you're getting it. It's like, we got to end this at some point, so we're going to have them show up. Oh, got to get back to the Grail.
Yeah.
Galahad there. But it really is, it just is fascinating how, it makes me think about how this is a film that they really should, maybe they do it because I've never spent a day in film school myself, which is not my purpose here.
There's not a lot of watching movies in film school. I mean, they do, but it's not like watching them and breaking them down. It's more like, I don't know, well, at least from my experience. But
No,
I would say that's the same thing, yeah.
No, I was thinking that this is a film that should be shown to film students as an example of how you should, how you do things cheaply and effectively.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And another way that they do this is with the cast. Like
Yes.
there's, I don't know what the number is, but like there's like 10 main players and they all play like a million
roles.
different roles.
Okay, I
They're,
noticed that.
yeah.
Like, I mean, this scene, you would literally have Graham Chapman talking to Graham Chapman.
Yeah. And
He's playing both
which
roles.
that one works because I mean so if you look at it like scenes where they have two people that are played by the same actors, there's a lot of knights that have their helmets on when the other person is present. Like I'll point out some of them as we go through. But,
Yeah, I'm thinking one in particular that I was noticing just this morning. If you don't mention it, I definitely will. But so now they have the quest, which is to go for the Holy Grail, and the first place they go to is they reach this castle, which is held by
The Frenchman.
the Frenchman.
Yeah.
And this is another historical thing that's in there, but it's so wonderful because now you're getting your typical English commentary on the French.
Yeah. Who's also played by John Cleese, who plays Lancelot. So, and this works because it's opposite shots.
Yes.
So we've got Lancelot down here, and then silly man with a mustache and a helmet up on the wall taunting them.
Of course I'm French. Why do you think I have this outrageous accent?
Oh my gosh, I love that scene. It was so funny.
Yeah, it's great.
And of course, it climaxes with the attack on the on Arthur and his party, but they don't launch a rock or fire a cannon. They catapult a bush.
Full cow. Yeah.
Fete la bouche. What? Fete la bouche.
Yeah, I'd noticed this before, but my friend Michael noticed it this time of when the Frenchmen are speaking French, they're like, what? And then they say it again in English. It's like, you guys are French. Anyway.
And of course, this launches the attack, and that's when you have the bombardment of farm animals on the party. They're all flying down. I really have to wonder if the ASPCA had notes about it. It would be the BSPCA in this case, but they had notes about this. And of course, the direct assault having failed, you then go to the effort to have the more covert assault with the wooden rabbit.
Yeah. Well, let me revisit some of the lines in there. He says English pig dogs, and pigs is used quite a lot in there, and it's pig fiance is going to be used in Princess Bride, but anyway, I'll get to the more of the parallels later. But
and the thing is that it's a very interesting phrase that they use because you're more likely to hear it used in German. That's what Schweinhund means. And it was something that has a very specific connotation in the 20th century because that was what a lot of the Germans referred to as Jews, which would have been especially offensive because of the association of pigs and and what that means to the Jewish faith. But you don't think about
just
it because
took all the air out of my joke.
oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, you just made it very serious.
But I thought it was fascinating because because they don't use the German word of it, which you see in all these movies from the 40s and 50s. Your stereotypical German baddie, Schweinhund, and all that. You don't think about it because it's being said in English with a French accent.
Yeah. And I like at the end of near the end of his entire spiel, your mother smelled of hamsters and your father is of elderberries. That is not it, but
Your mother's a hamster and your father smells of hamsters.
yeah. And anyway, then Galahad is like, "Is there anyone else up there we can talk to?"
So, but then you get the wonderful scene with the Trojan rabbit, which is, again.
Yeah, comical in its own. Well, what was it? Well, then how are we supposed to go in there or something along those lines?
Yes. It also reminds me of one of those things they teach you in school about how you have to go through all the instructions first before you do the assignment. Step 1, okay, let's build the Trojan rabbit. Step 2, we wheel it up there. Okay, you should cut under all the steps before. So.
And then they throw it at them. That was
Yeah. Which is another setup and payoff. They threw all the animals, now throw the fake animal at them.
And then we get the transition to where the parties split up, and this is told through a narration by a historian who is not A.J.P. Taylor, which is in itself a joke. A.J.P. Taylor was a very famous British historian of the 20th century who part of his fame came from the fact that he was what they called at the time a teledon, in the sense that when they were doing all these shows for like BBC and ITV, they would trot out a historian to add gravitas. Sort of the thing that Ken Burns does with people like David McCulloch and Ron Chernow, where we're going to sit them down, they're going to pontificate sagely based upon their knowledge. And so and while they don't have it in the descriptor, it's in the credits that he is not A.J.P. Taylor. They kind of are kind of twisting the joke a little bit. But as he's doing his pontificating about explain what's happening, Wright comes up and kills him, which of course becomes something that gets called back later on. But now we have the separate tales of the knights going around, and we start, of course, with Sir Robin and his minstrels.
Brave Sir Robin ran away. Yes.
One of the things I didn't realize was the minstrel who sings is a man by the name of Neil Innes. Now, Neil Innes has this very interesting. He's regarded as the seventh Python. He was never a regular on the show, but he contributed music. He was the squire on whom the wooden rabbit falls. And, And now he plays this minstrel, and
I was wondering about that because I'm like, that's pretty good. He's basically just the part where he's singing. I'm like, he's carrying a lot of comedic stuff with this. Is he one of the main guys? But I that's interesting that he's another guy.
He was like Connie Booth and Carol Cleveland in that he was Python adjacent. He contributed to the show. I think he appeared on the show a few times, but he was never a regular cast member who was kind of became part of that troupe. And I'm sure there's a lot to it, but they always acknowledged that they thought very highly of him, and they feature him in several roles in this movie. But that's where you, of course, have the encounter with the three-headed giant. And there's an example where you're talking about the multiple castings, which is you have it's played by Chapman, Jones, and Palin.
Yeah, so it's Sir Bedivere, King Arthur, and
Sir Galahad. Yeah,
so.
and having the dialogue, and then of course you have Sir Robin runs away. When danger reared its ugly head.
He bravely turned his tail. If I could sing the whole thing right here, and I will, but I'll spare you. Anyway, one line that I noticed in that song that just particularly hit me this time was, "Gallantly he chickened out."
Yes.
Which of course explains why there's a chicken on his shield.
Yeah.
So.
Didn't he say bravely retreated or something like that?
Yeah. I'd have to sing the whole thing to get through it.
I could possibly sing it, but I don't want to torture people with my lack of singing. So, and then of course we cut to Sir Galahad, who is dealing with a storm, and then he sees this vision of the Grail, which is the only other time in the entire movie you actually see the Grail.
Yeah,
and this leads him to Castle Anthrax, where Sir Galahad the Chaste now finds himself among what is described as 80 young blondes and brunettes, all between 16 and 19 and a half.
Oh my gosh, that made me cringe.
Yeah. It is cringy. And
this is the scene we always fast forwarded through when I was
and yet the funny thing is that at the time, that actually would have made them a little bit older than the average, because women girls as young as 13, 14, 15 were being married and everything.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where it is more historically appropriate, and yet at the same time it is, especially just today, so cringy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, this is when we find out from the twin sisters, both of them were played by Carol Cleveland, another Python adjacent actors.
I love that they play with that. They're like, this is clearly just to save money, but we're the same person.
Oh, that's my evil twin.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Zoot.
naughty Zoot. Yeah. And of course, the punishment is necessary, and it's going to be spankings followed by oral pleasuring, and that's when, of course, Galahad is about to lose his title of Galahad the Chaste when Lancelot and two other knights show up to save him from the peril.
I can handle all of them.
No. Just get back to the quest. Get back to the quest. And that's what I so love about that is it's kind of like we're about to get too far afield from the movie. Got to bring it back to the movie. And I love how in the next scene they actually identify it by its number, and how they
scene 32
no 24.
Scene 24.
Yeah.
And how they will refer to it later in the movie. They will call back to the scene by describing what's happening. Back in scene 24. So, and you could probably tell me better that I couldn't count.
No, I didn't count the scenes. I'd have to go back and watch through the edit. But
But this is when Arthur and Bedivere learn that there's this enchanter who has seen the Grail, and so now it becomes the side quest of finding the enchanter who will then lead them to, hopefully, to the Grail. And that's when they encounter the knights who say "Knee," who demand a shrubbery. And then, of course, we get the side quest of Lancelot.
Well, okay, before we move past the shrubbery, this is very important, shrubberies. I like how when the knight is like, "We demand a shrubbery," and then Arthur just looks aghast at first, and then he does a double take, and he's like, "What? A shrubbery?" Anyway, like
My favorite part was definitely when
he
I
looks
was
genuinely stunned, and then he's not stunned anymore.
We are the
Knights who
keepers of
say
knee.
Yes,
knights who say
we are the keeper of the words. Knee, and you boing. Yeah.
And then we get then what's happening with Lancelot, which is that he is riding through the woods with the Squire Concord, Eric Idle, and Concord gets shot. I just love Idle's delivery. Message for you, sir.
Yeah, my brother had that as a ringtone on his phone for the longest time, so it's stuck in my head. Message for you, sir.
And it turns out it's from someone who's being forced by their father to marry against their will.
Well, okay, before we move past that, this is important for the crisscross. He's like, brave Concord, I will avenge you. And he's like, well, I'm not quite dead, sir. And he's like, well, I don't remember what he says.
Mortally wounded.
Mortally wounded, yes.
Well, I think I could pull through, sir. And then, anyway, that's going to be a parallel to Princess Bride. So.
And so then Lancelot decides, there is he assumes it must be a maiden who's trapped against her will, and he's going to storm the castle. You had that wonderful sequence starting with him way off in the distance running, seemingly off the distance. All of a sudden, then he just shows up and starts slaughtering everyone in the castle.
Yes.
Even it's the flowers. There's okay, this shot. Okay, I'm going to point out the parallel for Princess Bride for this one. Mm-hmm. There's the shot with the guards standing at the gate waiting for him to come up, and they keep playing the exact same shot over and over again of him running over the horizon, and and then they cut back, and they're just like, what? And then they cut back to him running over the horizon. And then suddenly he's there. And he starts stabbing everybody and everything. And then he cuts the flowers on the wall.
He's just slashing
he runs past them up the stairs, and then he does a double take, and he's like, "Oh, the flowers gotta grow."
And he takes out the stand where the minstrels are singing.
Yeah.
He's just causing nonstop chaos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets up to the tower and he finds out it's not a maiden he's saving, but the
Prince,
yeah.
Who had, of course, which we already knew, because you'd start with the whole scene with him talking to his father about how his father is forcing this marriage because they live in a swamp, they need all the land they can get, and his bride has these huge tracts of land.
Oh, I completely missed the. Okay, so as he runs in and he kills the one guard and runs past, the other guard's like, "Hey."
Oh yes, I noticed that.
So, And so Lancelot gets there and he finds out it's Prince Herbert, and
It's like, you got my note. He's like, well, I got a note.
and of course, then the king shows up pale and he's, initially he's upset, but then he realizes that Lancelot's well connected. And so his son's trying to get out the window, and his father he decides he's going to kill Herbert and cast him off. So then he gives this great speech about how we're...
Well, okay, real quick. Yeah. I got to get all my favorite moments. Okay, so he cuts the rope, and he falls out the window, and he's like, oh... That's my favorite sound effect in any movie.
I definitely liked when the king did not allow him to sing at all, like the musical parts.
Yeah.
He's like, stop. Because
oh, no, no singing here. Yeah.
So then, of course, the king is introducing Lancelot, who has just killed like half the wedding party to everyone, saying that now
killed my uncle.
Basically, he's adopting Lancelot, and the marriage is going to happen. Only now it's between Lancelot and the woman, and Lancelot's just stunned. It's like he can handle gallantly storming castles and ruthlessly slaughtering people,
gallantly not chickening
out. But he is totally at sea with the situation, and then of course Herbert shows up. He survived. Yeah. And the question is, well, how did you survive? Well, I'll tell you. And
it's like, I'm not... Does he say I'm not quite dead? Or they repeat it over and over again.
It was the father.
Oh, yeah, the father.
The father of the bride, who is like, who's killed the father, who has mortally wounded the father. No, he could recover. Who seemingly at the cusp of recovery. That's a term for the words. And that's when his guards kill the guy. Oh, it's just
he's not quite dead.
But of course, now that Herbert's there,
he's my daughter in a very real and legally binding sense.
Opportunity for social climbing that unfortunately is forestalled by Herbert's recovery. The description of which we missed because we cut away from the song.
Yeah,
while Lancelot's swinging there,
I was like, I wanted to hear that.
But of course, this is where we, Lancelot then, and Galahad, they all reconnect. We learn through narration that they've spent a year looking for the enchanter, and they finally encounter him. And what I love about this is that you assume, because this is Arthurian legend, that the enchanter's name will be Merlin. And we learn that...
Well, we missed... Okay. And then they ate Robin's minstrels, and there was much rejoicing. There's in the animation part where they're doing the 2 years. Anyway, this is a great point to mention. Terry Gilliam's animation. It's just priceless in this movie. Yeah. It looks like medieval manuscripts, the style of it.
I mean, he came to the Pythons by way of animation, and it's something that unfortunately he left behind over the course of his career, and yet it was something that was very...
It's still in his style, though. Yes. Like his production design, like the sets and stuff, and like if you look at his just the design of his movies, it's got that same style. I
mean, I think it's most evident with Baron Munchausen.
Yeah, for sure.
Where you really see that played into it. But you're right. I mean, it's in a lot, but he really has kind of walked away from that pure animation.
Yeah.
That was once his stock in trade. But you encounter the enchanter, whom you assume is going to be Merlin, but he announces, "I am the enchanter. You may call me Tim."
Yes. And I think they used most of their budget on this scene. Explosion.
That was pretty cool.
Oh, it was awesome. He just pointing. Wouldn't that be a great power? You point an explosion. Yeah. And he's Tim. He is going to lead them to the cave of Kerbanog, which is guarded by a fearsome creature. And this is, I think, my favorite sequence of the entire movie.
Definitely.
Where they come across this fearsome creature, and they're like, "What is it behind the rabbit?" No, it is the rabbit.
And this is a parallel that I'll get to, but what did I write it as? The dismissal of animals or dangerous animals.
Yes.
Which you'll tell you when we get to it in Princess Bride, but that's actually a thing that my friend's mom noticed, so I've got to give her a shout out for that one.
It is comparison. I must confess, I totally missed because I guess because the ROUS are so, you don't think of them as in the same way that they all greeted the initial realization that it's the rabbit that's the threat.
Yeah.
So one night just goes up. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and take care of this, make short work of it, and gets his head ripped off in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the assault on the rabbit, where it's like 20 knights versus a rabbit, and the rabbit wins, decimating the party. But of course, thankfully they brought with them the holy hand grenade of Antioch, the instructions of which are read from the Book of Armaments.
Yes.
Which again is a nice
It's my favorite book of the Bible, by the way.
And I like how it's also, again, you're getting commentary upon, that medieval Catholicism, the robes, and the reading, the portentous reading from the
bald
book.
Spot on the head, so your prayers
tonsure,
get to heaven.
And they get so they blow up the rabbit, which of course draws the attention of the police who are investigating the death of the historian. And
I love this is a setup for the end, but it shows if you've seen this, how it ends with the police coming and picking up everybody. But this shows that even in a silly comedy, you need to have your setups. They've got this whole subplot of the police looking for the killer of the historian, and so anyway,
whom we've seen, and we know it's not or at least it doesn't seem to be anybody in the party, but I guess all knights look alike.
Yeah.
So then, they get in the cave. They find the inscription that directs them to Castle Arg.
Oh, ooh!
No, Arg.
Ooh, as in surprised and alarmed.
Because
and then
the Black Beast.
Yeah, the Black Beast of Og is behind them.
And I just love the way they end that sequence. How are you going to end the sequence where they're facing the Black Beast of Arg? Oh, let's just have the animator suffer a fatal heart attack.
Yeah. Cartoon monster.
And then we have Terry Gilliam die. So
yeah. And
then they get to the Bridge of Death. And there's the old man from scene 24, who now is...
They must have had a...
Yeah.
Well,
no, go ahead.
No, you first.
No, where he's like, how did he get up there?
Exactly my thought, too.
Exactly my question.
Yeah. They must have had a discount on explosions because we get some more explosions in this. Or explosives.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Answer me these questions 3, and each person.
The other side you see.
And this is where you appreciate the historical accuracy, because Lancelot, of course, is going to be the first up because he's brave. He knows no fear, and of course there's Robin prodding him. Let's not go first. And of course, because his bravery is rewarded by the fact that he gets the easy questions. What is your name? What is your quest? What is your favorite color? And then Robin's like, "Oh,
that's easy." Then he runs.
And what's the capital of Assyria? I don't know that. And then he gets pitched into the gorge of eternal peril.
And these shots, the close-ups of when they shoot up, you know how they did that?
No.
So they actually got down on their knees and put the camera like that, and they just stand up out of shot.
Oh, really?
And they speed it up a little bit, but it's interesting because I'm going to talk about filmmaker's toolbox right here, because it's you got to have little tricks in your head so that when you need them, But I use this trick for my zombie movie, Surviving the Zombie Plague. There's a scene where my character is supposed to be a weightlifter character, which clearly I'm not. But anyway, he lifts up another character, and I'm like, how are we going to do this? And I'm like, oh, we'll do it like Monty Python. So I had my friend spread his feet, and so it made him look shorter. And then as I pick him up, he just stands up straight. And so it looks like I lift him up. And my character's supposed to be taller anyway. We used tricks like just step stools and stuff to make that happen. But for this part, we just had him crouch down, or not crouch down, but spread his feet wider so that he'd look shorter, and then he stands up straight, and then I'd carry him off, and he'd just walk off with me, and we were giggling like schoolgirls when we were filming this scene. It was so fun.
I mean, again, it gets to why I feel like this is such a great teaching tool, because you see all those resorts to these techniques to make the most of their very limited budget. You know, things like forced perspective, to say, we can't do it, with like fast special effects. So we're just going to do a few filmmaking tricks. And I think this is
only a model.
And I think that's where Gilliam's background really comes in. I have this thing where I feel that a director's background really, is kind of their it's kind of their crutch in a way, but it's one where it's the great strength they bring to it. In having both Gilliam and Jones there, I think they're very complimentary, because they do that, I think, on most of their films. They co-direct.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
and that was what Gilliam brought. He knew how to use techniques from his animation to make the most of things, like with perspective and such.
Yeah.
So, but of course, Galahad Crossing, Lancelot Crossing doesn't really help him, because he gets caught by the police or on the other side.
Yeah.
Yes.
But Arthur and Bedivere make it, and they reach Castle Arg, and who's there? It's those darn French.
And the reason this is so funny is because they have this big dramatic buildup of, here's this boat, and then they get on the boat, and then they have the majestic music as they're playing, or as they're going across.
Going through the mist,
and
everything.
And then
so well done.
And then they get to the castle, and it's like, hello! Who is it?
It's those taunting French, who then shower them not with animals this time, but with manure.
Feces.
Oh, yes. Oh.
And this time when I saw that, like, it's green when it falls on them, and I saw the green on the walls, and I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. It's moss.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, that's not feces. That's just moss.
But I love how Arthur and Bedivere, and I must confess, all the times I've seen this is the first time I picked up on this, is Arthur is trying to do that dignified thing of just walk away.
Just walk away. And then they walk. I love how they cut to them on the other side of the lake, implying that they walk through the entire lake.
Yes.
But then Arthur summons the forces of his realm. He gets his army together. He's charging towards the castle. And then the Black Maria shows up. The police are there to arrest Arthur and Bedivere for the murder of the historian, and the film ends.
That threw me off guard.
Yeah. Well, supposedly John Cleese hates the fact the movie ends this way.
Oh, really?
But apparently they couldn't think of a better way. In one of his more recent commentaries, Palin says that they did have an ending. It was going to be a climactic fight involving Arthur's knights, the French knights, and somehow they're going to bring the rabbit back. But Cleese, he feels like it's too abrupt. I feel like that is another. It's another sort of undermining of filmmaking convention.
Yeah, structure. Yeah.
Because you not only do you because it doesn't really end that way, because you then have like 2 or 3 minutes of black screen and music playing.
Yeah.
So you're probably sitting there waiting for something to happen, and nothing does.
Yeah.
So, but that's the film.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's our review of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Now our review of The Princess Bride, 1987.
This one opens with a sick boy, played by Fred Savage, who's in his bedroom playing a video game in bed. His mother comes in and lets him know that he has a visitor, and it's his grandfather, played by the legendary Peter Falk, who comes bearing a gift. And the gift is a book which he begins to read his grandson. I have to ask you, why do you think he starts with it? They start with this?
I'm glad you said that, because this is a perfect framing device for this movie. It's based off a book, and it kind of makes half of the story about him and the grandpa. Mm-hmm. And the way that it ends when we get there, oh man, it brought a tear to my eye. But yeah, it's a framing device for the whole movie. And you can cut in and out of the stuff, and I think it might part of the reason is because it makes it where you can be more economical with the storytelling, where you can like cut away and then cut back and some time has passed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could see that. I was hoping too that it's kind of I feel like it sets a tone to the movie that it is a fairy tale story.
Exactly.
And I also like it though because it as a storytelling device, it allows for a degree of commentary, which generally comes from the grandson.
Yeah.
And you get it, and they signal that early on when you start hearing the story, and just as Falk's narration is building, you get him. Oh, is this a kissing book?
Yeah.
Which, having been that age, I totally appreciate that.
Yeah.
How a boy his age would say something like that.
Yes. He's like, I guess I'll stay awake.
Exactly.
Then Falk asks him like, or no, I don't know. He's like, isn't that a great start? And he's like, yeah, it's really good. Anyway,
and Falk makes such a nice narrator. He has this great genial voice. He just does such a great job of selling that throughout the movie.
Yeah, and the grandson has an arc for this movie that we'll get to.
But the book he's reading is the story of Buttercup, played by Robin Wright, who was raised on a farm worked by Wesley, who Carrie Elway's character, who she would torment him with all sorts of chores, but the two fell in love. Now, you can point to the quality of the acting, and they are both very good actors. But I read that, and Elway's apparently talks about this in his memoir, that the two were very attracted to each other. It was not just acting; that there was
that shows.
Yes, that they were very into that, and I like I like the fact that that's evident, because I read that sometimes actors, when they feel that way, especially if they have a relationship, they try to subordinate that because they don't want to be too open about their personal lives. But here, because they don't have that, it really adds to the genuineness of the emotions that the characters are supposed to feel for each other. It's so well done. But they fall in love. They committed to marrying each other, but Wesley's still a poor farmhand. He has no money, so he has to leave the farm to seek his fortune abroad. And then Buttercup receives word that the ship he was on was attacked by the dread pirate Roberts, who legendarily takes no prisoners. Buttercup is devastated, and she vows never to love again. I like how they start with the tragedy and how devastated she is. But 5 years later, she's getting married. Because she vowed never to love again, she vowed never to get hitched. And she is not only getting married, she's getting married to the greatest catch in the realm, Prince Humperdinck, played very oily by Criss Sarandon.
Yeah.
Who, in order to, make the marriage possible, makes Buttercup a princess. And that's how she goes from living on a farm to being a princess. And the narration makes clear she doesn't really love him, but she's doing it. What she does love is her daily ride. So she's out for her daily ride, and she encounters these three men, played by Wallace Shawn, Mandy Patinkin, and Andre the Giant. And this is where it really kind of gets home to the fact that this cast is so stacked with great actors, not necessarily range actors, but great character actors. I mean, Andre the Giant is so good at playing what he does. You're not going to see him in the role of, say, Fezzik or or the Vizier, but he is so good at playing that genial giant. And he was so perfectly cast. It's impossible to imagine who else they might have gotten. I can see maybe Richard Kiel, but I mean, Andre the Giant does such a great job. And it turns out these people that she encounters them. Turns out they're there to kidnap her, and you discover very quickly that they are not just kidnapping the princess. They're trying to do so to start a war between the kingdom of Florin, in which Buttercup lives, and their rival Gilder. And so now they're sailing to Gilder to stage the situation so as to cast the blame for the princess's kidnapping and death upon Gilder, but they're being pursued by another boat. And you get so many neat little jokes along the way. And this goes back to what we were saying earlier about Holy Grail. It's such a quotable movie about how they're commenting about, how the ship seems to be faster. And, God, I'm trying to remember Andre, the character's name. I have my notes here. Fezzik. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I was confusing Fezzik with Vizzini. Fezzik says, maybe he has better wind. But Vizzini's boat makes it to the Cliffs of Insanity.
The Cliffs of Insanity!
His delivery is so good.
It's amazing.
Can I just backtrack a little bit? No, I think part of that scene where they are going on the boat and they kidnapped Princess Buttercup, my favorite portion of that is when Vizzini is telling them what to do, and he's like, have I gone mad, or did the word think escape your lips? I did not hire you for your opinion, or pretty much along those lines. And then telling Inigo, like, hey, I found you when you were a drunk, so shut up. That kind of sets the tone of like where Vizzini is as far as how I guess these two kind of rely on him later. I think that kind of goes along with the movie later when you see that.
It's also great because it gets to how he perennially underestimates the people he's around.
Yeah.
And how that contributes to his death wonderfully, as we'll get to.
And in the boat, my favorite part of this is when the eels are coming and the boy interrupts or something, and then he's like, okay, where was I? The shrieking eels, and we see the grandpa's voice coming out of Vizzini, and then the eel trying to charge her, and anyway, that part where it's the grandpa voice over it.
Yeah, and then the boy's like, "You've read that already, Grandpa."
Yeah.
And the thing is, you would think that would actually disrupt the pacing of the storytelling, and yet it doesn't.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, since they set it up right at the start, like this is a thing called outer boundaries. If you, it's not completely what that is, but if you introduce something, it's a Brian McDonald term, outer boundaries. But if you introduce something at the very beginning, people will accept it. Like that's why you do Indiana Jones starting out in the temple getting the relic, rather than starting out him at school and then he goes from school to get the relic. It's like, I don't buy that. Anyway, but you do that first, so you're used to that, and then it's the framing device for the whole movie, and so you can just have Grandpa come in and narrate for whatever you need. But,
that's interesting. But now we have this chase scene, and it's just so fascinating to see how much again, the act structure better than I do, Aaron, but it's pretty much the entire first act, isn't it? Is the chase scene.
Which the boat?
Basically, the man in black pursuing Vizzini's party, and then when it's the Dread Pirate Roberts taking Buttercup and being pursued by Humperdinck.
I really wasn't paying attention to the act structure of this one. So, yeah, I'm hazy on the first act. The second act is them trying to get the princess. Or I don't know. I'd have to watch it again. I didn't watch it for that this time. So. I've just got movie quotes written, or just the quotes from the movie written as my notes. So that's why I've been kind of quiet. It's like I'm just going to be quoting the movie.
I would say definitely Act 2 would be probably when Wesley or Roberts climbs on the cliff, and then it's that brief pause where Inigo lets him sit for a minute, and then they start the action of he's chasing Princess Buttercup off.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah.
I'd have to watch it again.
I feel like it shifts tonally, though, when after Roberts, and because that's how he was known to them at the time, after he takes Buttercup from Vizzini by killing Vizzini. I feel like that's when it shifts to the second act, because then it's Wesley and Buttercup kind of trying to, that relationship, and now they're dealing with the dynamic of Humperdinck up to the point where Wesley dies. Maybe that's the second act.
Actually, yeah, that's a good point.
And then the third
Yeah,
act would be
it's to do with the princess. So I zoned out a little bit when you were saying when the second act begins, but it's the end of the first act is probably when Wesley disappears and she says, "I'll never love again." And then beginning of the second act is when she's with Humperdinck and is
so it's
her
like
fiancé.
a very short first act, very long second act.
I think it's probably normal length. I'd have to look at it, but
I guess I had in my head that acts have to be roughly similar in length.
No. So the second act is twice as long as the first act or the third act. So it's 25% Act 1, 50% Act 2, 25% Act 3. So
Okay.
yeah.
So where would you say the second act begins? Just automatically with Prince Humperdinck?
I think after, right when she says, "I'll never love again," and Act 1. And the armature of this to help structure what we're talking about it is true love wins in the end. And that's represented by Wesley. He's kind of a flat arc character of he doesn't vary from that belief all the way through the movie. But
This is why I love doing this. I learned so much.
Yes.
But we have getting back to the Cliffs of Insanity. We have the chase scene up it where we've already seen, but it's being underscored how bad of a boss Vizzini is, where he's criticizing Fezzik for not pulling them up fast enough, and Fezzik points out he's carrying 3 people. So
How did they do that scene? Because every time I watched it, I'm like, did he have dummies attached to him?
climbing the cliff, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
In the wide shot, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it could be rear projection for his close-ups. So they have footage of going up the cliff and they just project it behind him as these guys are tied onto him, where they can't put any weight on him, which I've found out from Robin Wright was talking about the Princess Bride. She was talking about how the part where he catches her, they couldn't put any weight on him. They had wires so that she didn't get any, because his back was bad, he couldn't lift anything.
That's what I heard too, yeah.
his back was damaged from his wrestling years,
Yeah.
and also his physical problems. So, but yeah, it was. So it must have been not just dummies, but ones that are made to be especially light so he could bear the weight.
Yeah.
So the masked man he's climbing up, he's catching up. Vizzini cuts the rope. The masked man somehow survives, so he orders his swordsman Inigo Montoya to take care of it. And this is when we get Inigo Montoya's backstory. We also get, and I feel like the best thing you see about him is that he is very much a man of honor, and how his honor is tied to his love for his father, which makes him such a wonderfully relatable.
He's
character.
the heart of the movie, if you ask me. It's and aside from the framing device of the grandpa and the grandson, which kind of it hit me in an unexpected way at the end, which we'll get there.
Yeah.
But,
and of course, he's willing to let he could have killed the masked man 2-3 different ways. He instead, not only does he let him catch up, he gives him the rope to do so, gives him a chance to catch his breath. And this is when we find out about the quest for the 6-fingered man. And then we get the chattiest duel in film history.
yeah.
Yes.
This is a parallel between Monty Python. They're very chatty, cutting off limbs duel with the Black Knight. But.
And it's so nicely done because it starts, you get the prelude to it when Montoya tells Vizzini, I have to fight him left-handed. It's just wouldn't be fair otherwise.
Yeah.
And they're both fighting left-handed. And I read that this took 2 months to prepare. They spent 2 months, 3 months in training. It's been a good chunk of time training for this.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it is such a wonderfully done film.
And the name of the guy who did this choreography was Bob Anderson. He did the choreography for Lord of the Rings and probably definitely a bunch of other stuff. But
Were all the stunts that they did they do those themselves, or?
I think so. Well, except for maybe the flip and the landing.
Mm-hmm.
All the swordplay they did themselves.
Okay,
So,
but not the flips, probably.
yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think the flip was the one where
If it's in a wide shot and you can probably tell it's not them. But,
I definitely loved when he's like, "Who are you?" What
yeah,
a consequence.
and I love Wesley's dry wit of. Okay, let me. Yeah, he's like.
You seem a decent fellow.
Yeah, you seem a decent fellow. I hate to kill you. He's like, you seem a decent fellow. I hate to die.
Definitely a good quote.
But it's one where, Montoya proves that he can defeat the Man in Black with his right hand until the Man in Black switches to his right hand.
Yeah.
And, of course, he manages to outduel Montoya and knocks him out and continues his pursuit. Seeing that they're being chased, Vizzini then orders Fezzik to use his brute strength to kill the masked man. Again, we get that wonderful, use your way. What is my way? You use your brute, surprise him, kill him with their strength.
Hit him with the rock. And then he's like, my way is not very sportsmanlike.
And again, we're seeing how Vizzini not just diminishes them, but demeans them. He thinks of them as being that way. And, Montoya and Fezzik are both very,
Capable.
good people, and they don't want to be these evil people, and so we're going to have a physical battle, which you could argue is still not terribly fair, considering how Fezzik definitely is stronger, but the Man in Black manages to win that one, and so the pursuit continues, and the Man in Black catches up to Vizzini, who has Buttercup tied up, and he is basically saying, "Back off! I'm going to kill the princess," which would accomplish Vizzini's goal regardless. But then the Man in Black challenges him to a duel of wits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I just want to go back on the when Fezzik is attacking Roberts. Just for the next portions of the final movies is definitely when he was fighting Roberts, and because he was only one person, he did mention like, "Oh, I'm not used to this because I'm used to fighting 10 people."
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty important for the last few scenes.
When they're looking at the castle and
I never even noticed that. Yeah,
I missed that too. That's a good pickup. So
yeah.
But and the dialogue there between the Man in Black and Dread Pirate Roberts and Vizzini is just so good.
Yeah.
About you must be clever. You ever heard of Plato, Socrates, Aristotle? Yes. Morons. And the test that the Man in Black sets him with the the iocane poison, put it in a cup. And it's interesting because he's totally truthful with Vizzini. He doesn't say I put it in one of them. He simply says, guess which one. And then we get Wallace Shawn doing that great monologue about, which one it could be.
Yeah. I am not a great fool because you wouldn't put a cup in front of you or me, whatever.
Never go against a Sicilian when death is on the line.
Spunk. But we found out, from the switch he does that he thinks that the man put the poison in his cup. So Fezzik figures he could just switch the cups, not realizing that the poison was in both cups.
Yeah.
It was just really nicely done.
Yeah.
And so Vizzini loses the duel of wits. So we have a man who is a better sword fighter than Montoya, who is in his way stronger than Fezzik and cleverer than Vizzini. So he is therefore the Red Pirate Roberts. And Buttercup of course, has that anger because he killed her beloved. Yeah. And of course, this is where you get to the one, stain in Wesley, which is where he's being duplicitous to basically smoke out. It's the kind of thing you see in a lot of movies. To me, it's kind of this latent sexism, like in You've Got Mail. about how Tom Hanks' character is basically manipulating Meg Ryan's character by the latter part of the movie by pretending to be her friend and finding out, kind of queuing her up to accept him as her lover, as her betrothed. Beloved, and the same thing is here, where he's basically using the pose of Dread Pirate Roberts to smoke out that she doesn't love Humperdinck and to confirm it.
Yeah.
And only it admits to the ruse when he's tumbling down a mountain.
As you wish. We forgot to set up that part.
Sorry.
So the grandpa's like, little did she know that every time he said, as you wish, he was really saying, I love you.
Yeah.
Although she figured that out by the time she pushes him down the mountain.
Yeah.
And then I love the fact that her response is just tumble after him.
Yeah.
It is such a wonderfully romantic gesture.
Yeah, and she's like making noises all the way down, and then when she hits the bottom, she's like, oot!
I know. I'm like, that scene had to have hurt.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It amazes me when you see contests, like there's a contest in England where they go tumbling down a mountain. How more people don't die from that, I don't know, because there's so many ways you can break your neck doing that.
Definitely. Isn't it for like a ball of cheese or something?
Yeah.
And I think the hill wasn't as steep as it looks. I think they tilted the camera a little bit.
Okay. Because the way that the ravine looks, it was...
it looks really steep.
Yes.
And of course, you don't see their faces, so these are two hopefully well-paid stunt performers.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
So, but now they are of one purpose, which is that they're fleeing together.
Yeah, and
Wait.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just before we jump into that, can we just take a moment to take like the cinematography, I guess, of how Buttercup and Dread Pirate Roberts, I suppose, and how she talks about his eyes and how lovely they are, and then they like specifically make it towards him,
Yeah.
and his eyes are just blooming.
It's like, hello, look.
This is him.
Yeah.
But you don't see that until after, when he says, as you wish, and he falls down.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just love that moment.
And then at the bottom, when she's like, I thought you died. And he's like, death cannot stop true love. That could be the armature. Like, that's...
Yes, that's true. There is that part.
And that's nice, and that's something that's, of course, called back, it's anticipating what happens later on, so...
Yeah.
But now they're fleeing together, and they escape into the fire swamp, where they encounter the three dangers.
Yes.
I must confess, I didn't write them down. I can never remember what the three dangers are exactly.
Yeah.
I know them.
Okay, go ahead.
It's the fire swamp, the rodents of unusual size, and the lightning sand.
Yes.
And then...
And they encounter the fiery holes first, and then they encounter the lightning quicksand.
And then the rodents.
And the roads. And I like how Wesley, you get the real, it's where you really see how Wesley, it is very much of a pose that he does, the self-assuredness. Like when he pulls them out of when he pulls her out of the lightning quicksand, and he sees the ROUS, and he,
I don't think they exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's right behind. This is suspense.
Yeah.
By the way. And he has seen them. So it's suspense if you're looking from her point of view.
Yes.
Like they're right behind it. I don't think they exist. And then,
I could be wrong.
Yes. Oh, and then also, meanwhile they're going through this, they're being chased by Prince Humperdinck, who now is following the trail of them both. I don't know if you mentioned that.
No, I did not.
Yeah.
So.
and sorry, we're jumping all over the place.
I know we are.
Right at the bottom of the hill, they kiss again. And then the kids, like, they're kissing again, and it's like...
The grandma's like, you might not mind so much later.
Yeah.
And that is one of the nice things they do with the with the commentary of the grandson, is that you see him gradually kind of being won over to that side of it. He goes from being your typical preteen boy, this is a kissing book, to where he gradually becomes more tolerant of it as he's won by the story. And that's the thing I really didn't appreciate until I watched it this last time, which how the grandson is being seduced by the quality of the story.
Yeah.
and how he's such an effective.
Let's say won over.
Yes, won
instead
over.
of seduced.
Okay, won over.
Yeah.
He's gradually won over by the story.
Just to go back to the Prince Humperdinck situation, as they're being followed, there is something that catches my eye every time at the beginning is when he finds, he's at the sword, after the sword fight, and Prince Humperdinck, claims that it's Florin, right? And then he says, or who's the guy? His assistant?
Rugen.
Rugen, yeah, Count Rugen is with him. And then he's like, could this be a trap? And then he's like, well, I always think everything's a trap. That's why I'm still alive. And it kind of sets the tone for Prince Humperdinck to be this, awesome prince that's valiant, which I think is kind of like a setup for what's to come later throughout the movie. But I just wanted to touch that
where
real
he
fast.
very much does not live up to that.
Yes, exactly.
But you could also see it as, I think it works as equally as well as foreshadowing, which is that he's communicating his lack of trust. He's a person who just, he just thinks the worst of everybody. That's not a good person. He's very good at putting on that pose of being the noble person who does these wonderful things. But right now we're also seeing how he's assuming it's Gilder because as we find out he wants it to be Gilder. Yeah. And in fact, he's even engineering that it's Gilder. But we'll get to that. So, but
in the fire swamp, like they set up the fire spurts first, and this is great. It's like one of the dangers, and it's a setup for beating one of the other dangers, the ROUSs. He rolls, like as he hears the sound for the fire spurt, he rolls over and he gets the rat right in the stream of it, and it burns him.
Something that I did not appreciate, though, for sure, was when Buttercup was just standing there.
Yeah.
It's like, this is your love. Shouldn't you fight for him?
She does grab a stick after a little bit.
But there's a bit of the damsel in distress, which is very traditional.
True.
But at the same,
this is a good way. They're a good opportunity for us to discuss who do you think is the main character.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to be corny about this and say the main character is true love.
Oh. The main character is the Force.
It's the midi-chloridians.
Okay, so I've got 4 possibilities. I've got Wesley, Indigo, and Buttercup.
And who's the
Buttercup is pretty passive, so she doesn't lead much of the plot. She's almost the MacGuffin. Like she's definitely a character, but still, and she's very, I guess, feisty, or I don't know. She goes against the prince and tells him off a few times, but she really doesn't. She's kind of the thing that, like, she's the MacGuffin of they're going to get her.
Yeah.
I have what I think it is, but let me see what you guys think of who the main character is.
That's always been a hard one for me. I want to say that it is technically Wesley or / Roberts, because even though you kind of said it as that he's this flat character.
Yeah,
right?
Flat arc character.
Character?
That's not like he's flat, like bad character.
Yeah, no,
that means
I remember you
he doesn't
telling me
change.
He doesn't change.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't change, it's still a story that revolves around him and his story. That's the way that I see it as, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark,
I'm going to start by asking, what is the criteria for a main character?
Well, this kind of questions. Let me answer your question with my answer for who I think it is. I think you're right. I think it's Wesley, but it does an interesting thing structure-wise. If he's absent for like a big portion of the first half of Act 2, But as we were talking about the 3 tests that he has to go through with these 3 guys, like that's a great setup for how skilled he's become if he's not just a farm boy anymore. He's really good at being Dread Pirate Roberts. And I'm not sure if the movie wants you to not know it's him or if they don't. I mean, I've seen it so many times. Of course, I know it's him. But anyway, so you hit it spot on. Like, I don't think I can explain it any better. If he represents the armature, he's for true love the whole time. And
yet at the same time, he ends up becoming a MacGuffin himself. Because when Montoya finds out who the six-fingered man is,
right,
That's true.
he has to get Wesley and in order to enable his arc.
Indigo's almost like a secondary main character, is how I see it.
Yeah.
Of it, anyway.
But I'm going to say the main character is the grandson.
Oh, yeah,
Because
that's true.
we're seeing him kind of have his own journey through it, of whom all the characters that we're learning about are just components. Because at the end of the day, they were all just characters in a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's just me being contrarian.
Yeah. There is a thing to that. But
Yes.
in the story, I think it's Wesley.
Yes.
And the part where he's in the pit of death and he supposedly died, that's the down point, the big third act down point, which supports the case for him being the main character. The things are the worst for him, and he's basically they think he's dead, and he's not quite dead.
Spoiler alert.
Anyway,
He's only mostly dead.
and then Indigo has to come in and save him. And, but anyway,
But we definitely jumped. What
go
were
ahead.
say? No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because I think I read somewhere that there's talk of remaking this. And my first thought is,
no.
again, why do we need to keep remaking all these great films
So sad.
when we should be, if we're going to remake films, let's make the ones that were bad, we can make better. But
yeah, I saw a pitch for a Muppets one, which is the only way I'd want to see this. But yeah.
Muppets one would be awesome. But now that I think, after hearing this, I'm thinking it would be interesting to give Buttercup more agency than she gets this, because it is the part of the film that, especially as we dwell on it, has really not aged very well, which is the fact that she has no agency. The only way she seems to get agency, again, spoiler, is when she plans on killing herself. And even that's taken away from her by the discovery that Wesley's alive.
Yeah, that's true.
And the thing is that, which is kind of funny because Robin Wright is such she can be a very assertive actress. And that's something that comes across very well in like, say, House of Cards. She can be that very forceful, very, alpha type of character. And here it is kind of, it is a little diminishing to see her as a MacGuffin. To see anytime a person is reduced to a MacGuffin is in itself kind of sad. But the fact that it's the one prominent female character in a movie of a lot of men is, to me, a little problematic. Well, thanks. I just ruined Princess Bride for myself.
Well, okay, there are male MacGuffins.
right?
Wesley's one we just talked about.
Yeah, Luke Skywalker is actually maybe my favorite MacGuffin in a movie because it's a beloved character. A lot of people don't like that in Force Awakens he's not really in it, but I do like that he's the place that they're going. But if you talk the sequels with me, like it's aside from the third one, I kind of really like them. But I don't.
Well, we probably should save that for a future.
Yeah, we'll save that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, don't kill Princess Bride for yourself, because I don't know. Like, even with her being that way, like she's still not like just letting things happen. She's in a position where she has very little power to do anything, but she's not just laying down. Like
She does use what little agency she has to force things, and that is key to driving the plot.
Yes.
For example, when they get out of the swamp and you're about to have this fight between Wesley and Humperdinck and his soldiers, she's the one who preempts it by making, I will marry you if you let Wesley go.
Yeah.
And
she does what she can with what she's got.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
even though, of course, Humperdinck is And I love the way they do it, which is, do you promise? And Humperdinck goes, I swear on my life. And then he turns to Rugen and says to him, throw him in the pit of despair.
And he's
Rugen
right
says,
there.
I swear it will be done. Yes.
I swear it will be done. That's what he says.
They're standing right there as he's saying it.
But this is how we found out that Rugen is the six-fingered man that Montoya's been after all this time.
Yes.
But Wesley gets knocked out, and
this is the midpoint of the movie where he gets knocked out, sent to the pit of death, and she's unaware. Like things have.
I was just gonna say it's the pit of despair.
Oh, sorry, it's the pit of despair. Yeah, I messed that up in my facets thing. I was discussing the midpoint. But I didn't realize till afterwards. I'm like, oh, I messed that up.
It's okay.
But this is where you start to see. The Gransons surrendering to the story, because you get that cut back where he's getting upset with the direction the story is going, and he's like, but Wesley's got to end up with Buttercup. He can't end up with the prince. Who kills the prince? And the grandfather's, no, the prince lives, and he's just so upset by this.
That's not how it goes. Get it right.
Yes. My favorite line from the grandfather is like, when the grandson was like, that's just not fair. And then the grandfather's like, well, where is that in a book? Life's not fair. In general, like, no.
I don't know if we skipped it yet or if we haven't got there, but I like the part where he's figured something out in the story before it happens. And he's like, yes, you're very smart. Shut up.
I wish I had noted where that was in the movie.
Did we miss it? I think we might have, because Buttercup has a dream. No, it's after.
Yeah, we're about to get to the dream.
Yeah, we're about to.
Okay.
We're
let's not miss the dream.
Yeah, that's when she's assumed at this point that Wesley's free, and then we cut to a scene of the wedding where she's married Humperdinck, and she's being introduced to their subjects, and you get the old woman going, boo, boo,
slime, filth, rubbish.
Yes.
Boo.
And then it's when we find out that that's just that's just a nightmare, and that she's been having a lot of them. And that's when
I looked in the credits, and it says, I saw in the credits as it was going by, it calls her Ancient Booer.
Awesome.
which actually to me reminds me of how some of the characters in Holy Grail were like old woman.
Yeah.
So, which of course didn't need to be corrected. Man,
I'm 27. I'm not old. Or I'm 37. I'm not old.
But she is now so compelled by her love for Wesley that she pressures Humperdinck to try to cancel the wedding. Mm-hmm. And while Humperdinck won't quite do that, he does make a promise. Again, we see the Humperdinck's character to, or lack thereof, he's going to send out his fastest ships to come into contact with Wesley to let him know. But of course, if it doesn't happen, marry me. And so,
as an alternative to killing yourself.
Yes.
Would you consider?
But we now have, but we also see that Wesley is in the pit of despair, and he's being tortured by the machine that will suck life out of him, because Rugen is not just ruthless, he is also a sadist.
That, and then we also see that Prince Humperdinck set up the entire plot for kidnapping.
He had hired Vizic because he wanted to, or Vizzini, Vizzini.
Mm-hmm.
I keep confusing those two names. Vizzini to stage the whole thing, and now he's got to go with Plan B. And Plan B might even be better, because once they're married and strangled, it's even more tragic, and then he'll get the war that he really wants. So, but he's setting this up as like there's still this plot, so we have to clear out the Thieves' Forest. Let's get a brute squad going, and it's when they're clearing out Thieves' Forest that we're encountering Montoya, who is very much in his cups, and who is there on the brute squad to help clear him out but Fezzik. The two are reunited. And this is where I have a problem with it. How does Fezzik find out that Rugen is the six-fingered man?
That's what I wanted to know too. They definitely missed that part.
Yeah.
I've got a plot hole from earlier, and I didn't want to miss it, or I didn't want to say it because it would derail our nice little thing we were having with.
So this is not the
Indigo.
first plot hole, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not the first one. The Indigo is talking about how he was that the Count came to him to make that sword for him, and he's like, it's the most amazing sword ever. And then he's like, he came to get the sword, and my father, or he wasn't going to pay my father the whatever happened. And I'm like, okay, how do you still have the sword? Why didn't he take it? Like, you're a child. He could have just taken the sword from you at that point.
That's a good question.
That is a good question.
But anyway,
But that's sort of the plot hole for that story, not the plot hole for the movie.
yeah.
Well, I know it's the movie, you're right, but Fezzik, this is where Fezzik basically becomes info dump, because he brings Montoya up to speed with a lot of things that I don't know how Fezzik knew them, and they never really quite explain how Fezzik knows that
Count Rugen is the
six-finger man. But Baron Montoya has his purpose in life, and he's going to enlist Wesley's help, who somehow they know happens to be around. Well, it's true. They know. It's like they know he's Wesley, and they don't just assume he's the Dread Pirate Roberts. I guess was that.
They said that. Well, the way that Indigo referred to him was the Man in Black, and that's how I guess they assume that he is.
Yeah, I don't think they know that he's Wesley, or
Wesley,
even
though.
that Wesley is a person.
That's a flaw in my notes. Then at this point, I'm saving myself some space. No longer writing the Man in Black or Dread Pirate Roberts. I'm just writing Wesley, so that was me. So
It's okay. We knew he was Wesley.
yes, but Montoya still does not. But he's looking for the six-finger man.
Yeah.
And Humperdinck is trying to. Then we see Humperdinck trying to sell Buttercup on the wedding that's going to take place. He talks about how his fleet will be there to see them off, and she's like, "All but your 4 fastest ships, right? Yeah, they won't be there." And she realizes
He lied.
he lied, and he gets so frustrated that he goes to the pit of despair.
Well, this was the part where I feel like Buttercup was like the strongest. Is like, you are such a coward.
Yeah.
And that then enabled him to like, I would not say such things if I were you.
I would not say such things if I were
This is
you.
when she really begins to realize the man she's marrying.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, you really see his character.
yeah. And then he runs to the pit of despair, and
I'm sorry, but the
Go
way
ahead.
that he runs is like, like those little kids that you're like, I'm going to go tell my mom. That's how he ran.
you do get very much the sense of the petulant child beneath the suave demeanor that he tries to put out there. So,
Oh, yeah.
I have to say, in the Wesley death scene, I really do feel there's not a missed opportunity, because he goes down there. Wesley's tied to the machine, and Humperdinck just has his little monologue about true love and how much he despises it. And then he just turns the machine up to maximum. And Rugen stands up and goes, "No, not to 15. And I'm sitting here thinking, why couldn't it have been 11? Because...
Well, it was actually 50.
50. Oh, it's
Yeah,
50.
50 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
50. Okay. But it still could... It should have been 11.
Yeah.
Because it would have been so awesome, because it's Christopher Guest, who was the drummer in This Is Spinal Tap, directed by Rob Reiner. And you have that whole famous scene where he talks about how he has an amplifier that he treasures because it has the setting up to 11. And there's this whole bit about how, it's just that, when you turn it up to 10, you need to go a little bit higher, you have the 11. And then Rob Reiner's like, why not just, make that thing to 10? No, because it goes to 11. If he had stood up and just said, don't turn it up to 11, it would have been such a great callback to that mutual project. But he turns up to 50, and he sucks all the life out of Wesley. But apparently not all the life. Because there's just a little
He's
bit of life
only
left.
mostly dead.
He's
Yes,
only
exactly.
mostly dead.
So
We're not quite dead.
but hearing the screams that who Montoya somehow can instantly recognize as the screams of the Man in Black.
And the way that he quotes it was the way that his heart broke when his father died.
Yes.
And only then was like the cause of Count Rugen.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
I missed that. So he basically realized only Count Rugen could do something like that.
Yes.
which I suppose was indirectly true. So, but Montoya and Fezzik they find Wesley's body in the pit of despair, and they take him to Miracle Max. And
Who
this
is Billy Crystal?
and it's in IMDb, so take it for what it's worth. Mandy Patinkin says that the only injury he suffered in this movie was his ribs were hurting because he was laughing so hard at Billy Crystal's performance. Apparently, they had great difficulty, keeping straight faces and avoiding laughing out loud because Billy Crystal's performance was just so funny as Miracle Max. When he plays the old guy, and
When they walk up to the door, he's like, Fezzik is like, "I'm on the Brute Squad," and he's like, "You are the Brute Squad."
Definitely funny.
Or like when he's testing Wesley and kind of picks up the arm, drops it. I've seen worse.
Well, that part, and then where he's like, pumping in the air or whatever life into him, just to hear what he's living for, and he's like, "True love," and then he's like, "See, you can't," or Inigo's like, "You can't deny that," or whatever, and then he's like, "No, what he said was to blave."
Which we all know means to bluff. That's very noble.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love how the whole lead up to that, where he's talking about how Miracle Max saying he'll only do it for noble purposes, and Montoya spins some sort of line, and it's very noble. His wife, his son. Boy, you not lie. You can't lie. Yeah. And then of course, all this talk about nobility. It's when he finds out that by bringing back to life, he'll hurt Humperdinck, who had Miracle Max fired. That Miracle Max decides he's going to go ahead and do this.
Yes, that was my favorite.
So he gives him the big chocolate pill, and so now it's the storming of the castle's on.
And look, this is very important. He explains that he's only mostly dead. He's not quite dead, anyway.
But apparently, Miracle Max lives close enough to the castle to where it's not they're supposed to wait like 30 minutes before giving him the pill, or
you can't go swimming after 6.
And I love his wife too. I'm not a witch, I'm your wife.
Played by the brilliant Carol Kane.
Yeah.
Who it's funny. No matter how many roles she's in, I feel like she still does not get. We still don't appreciate her enough.
Yeah.
And of course you get that great line: "Have fun storming the castle."
Think it'll work?
Not
it'll
a chance.
take a miracle.
Take a miracle. That's what it is. And which, of course, Miracle Max has given them, which is the pill.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, and you have that wonderful bit where they get to the castle and they see that the guard is not. Initially, like the calculation was that they needed the Man in Black because Fezzik can only take 10. There's going to be 30, and 20 is more than Montoya can take, so they need the Men in Black. And now that they have him, it turns out there's 60 men.
Yeah.
And Wesley's like, well, if I had a month, I could figure something out. And it turns out, we also the wheelbarrow. Oh, when did you mention we had a wheelbarrow? No, if we had what was it? A
Holocaust cloak?
The Holocaust cloak, yeah. So it turns out, and then he just, Fezzik just whips it right out of his.
Just has it in his shirt.
Yeah.
He's like, "Where did you get that?" "Miracle Max gave it to me."
Yeah, it looks so
it's
good.
Like, when did this happen? We were there. We didn't see this.
Exactly.
It's good. I like it.
So we have the wedding underway, officiated by.
There's one last line before, as they're walking away from, when they're going off the wall, looking down at the castle. He's like, "Indigo, yeah, I hope we win."
Yeah, under the Jay, he has so many good lines, but for me, he's the most challenging part of the movie because that accent is so thick. That there's like that whole bit early on the boat when they're doing the rhyming thing.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I miss half of his rhymes.
Anybody want a peanut?
Exactly.
Yes.
What was the setup for that?
It was Vicini telling them to stop rhyming. I can't remember how he phrases it. I tell you,
stop rhyming. I mean it.
Yeah.
Anybody want a peanut?
So you have the wedding, which is officiated by none other than Peter Cook, and unfortunately, Peter Cook is a person that not enough people in America appreciate. He was part of a comedic duo in the 1960s with Dudley Moore, who of course famously then goes and does. He's best known today for Arthur. But they had a show that they did, which was kind of a precursor of Monty Python, circling back to that, and which was very funny. And Peter Cook was just a comic genius, and you see it with this performance of the lisping minister.
My wedge. My wedge is what brings us together today.
Love, true love.
Another one that if you could let me go on forever with that one.
I mean, and the funny thing is that you're not quoting the lines themselves are not funny. It's the delivery.
Yeah.
And that to me is the genius of
and I think it's in the setup too of they set up this grand, we're having this royal wedding, and then this fancy looking guy steps up and then he's like, marriage.
And he just sells it because he is just so serious, so solemn. Yeah. And yet it's just it's such a quotable. Again, you're not quoting jokes.
Yeah,
you're not quoting. You're quoting dialogue, but it's just so wonderfully delivered.
Yeah.
Have you the wing?
Oh, wing. Yeah.
So, but as he's going through this, you start to hear stand your ground," because Fezzik is dressed up in the Holocaust cloak, being pushed by Montoya in the wheelbarrow. And
with Wesley on his back.
You're gradually coming back to life. And when pirate Roberts takes no prisoners, he's saying that great accent of his. But that's where the accent really sells,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that was the part where I was like, I couldn't really understand him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is just, and how they
all your worst fears are about to come true.
Yeah, the way that they just scare off all 60 men.
Yeah, except for the
one
guy.
Yeah, which of course he has to stick around for that. So
yeah, and before we move on from this, the Indigo gives like a speech to him, and he's like, "No, I'm not giving you the key." And he's like, "Fezzik, rip his arms off." Oh, you mean this key?
And so they get inside, and they encounter Rugen and 4 soldiers, and this is when you get the great line that Montoya says he's been waiting virtually his entire life to deliver.
Yeah.
Hello.
My name is. Oh, hello.
Oh,
my name is Inigo
Montoya. You have killed my father. Prepare to die.
Yes.
And then Count Rugen just runs away. He just turns around and runs away. It reminded me of the run away, run away.
And of course, Fezzik is sitting here. He's having to manage Wesley, and then when Rugen locks, the door, Montoya keeps throwing himself against it. He's like, "Fezzik, I need you!"
Yeah.
And Fezzik just.
You could just hear the desperation in his voice, which was really good acting on his app.
But Humperdinck has fast forwarded the marriage because it's taking too long, and he's worried that somehow Wes is going to disrupt it. So he's like, say man and wife, man and wife. And so now poor Buttercup assumes that she's married, and she's preparing to kill herself. She tells the old king this, and the king is clearly, not in his prime anymore.
Yeah.
She kissed me.
Yes. That's the takeaway for him.
Yeah.
You got a kiss from a pretty girl. So, but she is preparing to kill herself, and who interrupts her but her true love?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I missed the part where she's like, I'm going to be killing myself tonight. And he's like, won't that be nice?
And then he goes, he kissed me.
She kissed me. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And then you get the line about there's the shame. There are only so many perfect breasts in the world. Be ashamed to harm yours or whatever. Again, a little bit of objectification, but we'll go with it because it's true love, I guess. And that's when she begins to realize that he's not quite the man he was when she last saw him.
She's like, why won't you hold me?
Gently, clunk.
Gently.
So we have Montoya killing Rugen. And of course, and it's so nicely done because it's so well earned that Montoya's pursuing Rugen, and Rugen, of course, he thinks he can win through subterfuge. So he sneakily waits, and then he stabs Montoya with a knife, and it looks like
he throws it at him.
Oh, he throws it?
Yeah.
Okay, he throws it at him. So.
Stab him.
And then, of course, that's when he decides he's going to be the sneering villain of, oh, you're the little Spanish brat. Now he feels like Montoya's vulnerable.
Yes.
And of course, that's when you get the great comeback where he lunges at Montoya and Montoya deflects it, while holding his insides in.
Yeah.
And then, another deflection, and he seems to come back to life, and he keeps repeating the line, and each time it's with more force. It's so well done.
It's only mostly dead.
But yes.
Okay, so the last line that he delivers there.
Yeah.
I want my father back.
Yeah, I want my father back, you son of a bitch. He was thinking about his dad when he was delivering that, who died from cancer.
Oh, yes, I read that.
When he read this script, he's like, if I can do this script and if I get to that point, it's going to be like my father is alive again for that little moment. And he did that. And right before that scene, he was talking to his dad, and then he did that, and he's like, I did that for you, Dad. And anyway.
Did I get a chance to see that before he passed?
No, he'd already passed away.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So it's sort of like a mental dialogue.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I didn't know that. But Wesley is talking about how, because Buttercup never said I do.
Yes.
It's not official. Isn't that right, Humperdinck? And it turns out Humperdinck's
Just right there.
Yeah. And you're about to get this, and I love how you're expecting maybe this climactic sword fight. Instead, what you get is this climactic bluff, and it's so well done.
Mm-hmm.
To the death. No, to the pain.
I'm not familiar with that term.
And he just basically, and this is where you get the sense of how, weaselly Humperdinck is, where the thought of being, disfigured like that is enough to break this resolve. The guy is supposed to be running a kingdom, and he's basically intimidated by a man who can barely move into surrendering.
Yeah.
So, but, and of course, being the good guy, they let him live. And Montoya meets up, and he has no purpose in life anymore. So, what job offer does he get?
To be the next
Dread Pirate
Roberts.
Yeah.
I forgot there was this line back in when they first meet where he was talking about his whole revenge story. And then he's like, I just work for Vicini to pay the bills. There's not a lot of money in revenge.
It's not a good business.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is, it kind of harkens. I'm trying to remember the movie is where they talk about how empty revenge is, but I mean, it plays so nicely with that. Mm-hmm. But so Fezzik finds the horses, they ride off.
And it's weird. There's a line there where he's like, Fezzik, you did something right. And it's like, when did Fezzik ever do anything wrong?
Yeah.
Which is,
you did something good, I think he said.
Yeah, you did something good. And it's like, maybe there is some deleted stuff that was set up for
maybe
that.
It goes back to how even his friends tend to underestimate him because he's just a big giant. So a big giant. There's a redundant term. But they ride off and they're about to kiss, and the grandfather's like, "Okay, we're done."
Yeah.
And then grandson says, "You can describe the kiss."
Well, maybe I don't mind so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He has been won over by the story. And then we get the great climactic kiss.
And again, that's a very strong art for an 8-year-old.
Yes, it is.
8-year-old boy.
Strong art.
Arc. Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
arc.
And
It's a very strong arc for an 8-year-old boy.
and he's been so won over, he wants his grandfather to come back and read it to him again the next day.
And as you wish.
Yes.
Yeah, I shed tears during that. That was, yeah, I don't know. That one caught me off guard. It's like, okay, Grandpa, maybe you could read again to me tomorrow. And he's like, as you wish. And he closes the door. It's
Such a great way.
so good.
Yeah.
It's a very heartwarming story.
You think it would you think it would end with a kiss, but no, it ends with going back to the grandfather grandson. So well done.
Yeah.
And that's The Princess Bride.
Now we go crisscross. Every once in a while, two films will share a bond to transcend time, space, and even genre. These similarities go down to their DNA. So let's dissect and deconstruct, compare and contrast. It's time to go crisscross.
crisscross.
Aaron, you had a list of them, I believe.
Yes.
I came up with two. I'm going to start with the first one. They're both funny films.
They are both funny films. So, first off, they're very different movies, but they've got things that are oddly similar between the two of them that once I point them out, you'll see. But, okay, so most obvious, it's a medieval setting, and they're both comedies, like you pointed out, both very funny films. Basically, every line is a joke. But they have different humor styles. One is just silliness, and I'm not sure how I describe Princess Bride.
Yeah, I would say that the comedy in Princess Bride is hard to describe.
Yeah. It's, well, the only thing that I can think of is it's kind of Jewish humor. Like you've got Rob Reiner as the director, Billy Crystal, and of course Peter Falk.
And written by William Goldman, who did both the book and the screenplay.
Mm-hmm. And so you've got that strong through line to it, but it is kind of its own thing. Like there's not really many comedies that are like Princess Bride, and it might be that it's straddling the line between being an earnest fairy tale and kind of a tongue-in-cheek type. Basically every line is a joke.
The contrast for me is where, and this goes back to something I was referring to earlier about the Holy Grail, which is that the Holy Grail is like a kitchen sink movie, because it's like you're getting so many different forms of comedy. You're getting satire, you're getting physical humor, you're getting the zany madcap stuff. It's just the surrealism. It's very it's like all these different humor styles brought together. And Princess Bride, it's very the humor is primarily to me in the dialogue and the delivery.
Yeah, and it's more uniform than Monty Python. Monty Python has so many jokes and different things in there that you can't pick up everything on one watch. So definitely watch it again.
I probably will. It's funny.
Yeah.
It just definitely needs to, how do you absorb it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think is why people enjoy revisiting, because there is so much to absorb. You can get so much more out of it with multiple viewings. I actually want to go back to a point that Aaron was making, which was my other comparison, which was the medieval setting. Mm-hmm. Because what I love about both these movies as examples is that they both are not so much about the medieval world as they are about how we think about it. Mm-hmm. And this is something that you see. We've already discussed it a bit with the Holy Grail, which is that it really is kind of all over the place in terms of chronology. Mm-hmm. It takes figures from the 6th century, says they're in the 10th century. Then you have things from the 14th century. It's all over the map, and it's very much of a goulash. And Princess Bride does it a little bit differently, which is there's no set periodization. There's actually this discussion online as to when it's set. Which people are pointing out, well, there's this element which was from, say, the 16th century, this element which from the 19th century, this element which from the 14th century. So, and it ultimately, which of course is pointless because one, it's a fantasy, but also it's more about how we imagine what this past was like. Mm-hmm. That we imagine, princesses and quest for grails and knights in armor and swordplay,
peasants piling
muck on top of
each other,
and of course, old women screaming, boo, and all this stuff, and it's the medieval world in the modern imagination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and whether it's they're like these, and both of them have these fairy tale elements. I mean, carnivorous rabbits and enchanters and 3-headed giants and all that stuff is definitely no less fantastic than Miracle Max and the Roads of Usual Size. But
yeah,
it's kind of how it is. We cram in a lot of mythology into our understanding of the medieval world that really is part of what's being satirized. And the satire, I would say, is a lot less visible. It's more understated in Princess Bride, but it's there. This is definitely how we do, fantasize about it and romanticize it in a way that, maybe if we examine it, it starts to show a few of the cracks. But it does. I think that there is a commonality. How we make it about, kings and romance and all this stuff, and which
there's this picture that we have in our head of what medieval times was like, and
and both of them exploit it from different directions.
Yeah, for the making of Monty Python, they made sure not to have anything too clean. Like they put mud on everything. But I mean, that could also just be our depiction of what we think.
Exactly.
But anyway, okay. So next one, not quite dead. I'm not quite dead. I'm getting better. And then only mostly dead from Princess Bride. That was a repeated thing all over the place in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. This is actually why I wanted to do this one, because I noticed that parallel, and it's kind of a weirdly close thing that you think maybe that was directly influenced by that.
Have either of you ever read the book?
No.
I read like the first chapter, of the Princess Bride, but I didn't finish it. I only say that because I remember in the story, she's supposed to be a maiden betrothed, if I'm not mistaken. And so I really need to finish and read it. But have you?
No, I have not.
No.
Because I'm curious to know to what degree what Aaron just identified was a reference in a way to Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Because Monty Python and the Holy Grail is such an influential movie. It is one that I could see, a writer like Brian Goldman
influencing the book, you say?
Or at least influencing the script. And that was the question. Was it in the book, or when Goldman was adapting it? Because I don't know when the book came out. I
don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I mean, I think it was out for a while before they did the movie. But it could be that was either it influenced Goldman in the book, maybe it influenced him. It wasn't there, but he put it in the movie. I honestly don't know. I must confess, my research has certain limits.
I think if anything, it would probably just be directly movie to movie. But I don't know though. It's just an odd similarity that's kind of all the ones that I have. And then Velia just mentioned this one, an unwanted marriage, the Prince Herbert and Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh, yes.
And Princess Buttercup and Princess Bride.
Oh, that's a good one, because that was sort of it kind of plays to this image we have about how in the Middle Ages it wasn't about love, it was all about circumstance and duty and all this stuff, and especially among the upper classes, supposedly.
Yeah.
And it's funny because in Monty Python, it's a prince instead of a princess, which is like, oh, that's
a very
cool.
effeminate prince.
Yes, which of course was part of the joke of Lancelot showing up thinking he's a princess. Oh, it's a man. So,
You got my note. I got a note. Okay. Okay, then dismissing a dangerous animal. So the killer rabbit in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, they're like, "What's it? Is it behind the rabbit?" It's like
it is the rabbit.
And then the ROUSs from rodents of unusual size from Princess Bride.
Yes.
So.
The rabbit definitely threw me off. I thought it was just gonna be like a joke, like, oh, it's not the rabbit, it's behind it too.
Yeah.
So that was. I don't know how to say that, but yeah, I like that play on.
Well, I also like how there's also this nice little subtext of how to make the rabbit vicious for the attack scene, they used a hand puppet. And of course, the rodents of usual size are not actual animals that they've trained for this. They were short men in costumes.
I was going to say they're humans in costumes.
Yeah, they were.
Well, which is basically what the rabbit was in those close-up scenes when he's gouging out the throats of the knights when they're trying to attack. And of course, it's one of the things I love about this. And again, this gets to, I think, the genius of the filmmaking of it, which is that they really leaned into the fact they had a low budget. It's kind of like, we're just going to go with it. We're going to, we're not doing fancy special effects. We're accepting it.
More of a style thing than they leaned into it.
But it becomes part of the humor. Right up there with the coconuts. And Whereas it's like one of the points that I find like the ROUS is they seem to accept the fact that they were not going to pass them off as just large rats. So, this was not, Food of the Gods or whatever contemporary large rat movie there I can think of. So.
Okay, then English Pig Dogs and your pig fiance / it's possible pig when he's talking to him. That's one of my favorite lines from Princess Bride. It's possible pig. I use that all the time. String of Taunts from the French Taunter, and Wesley mocking Butter. Or no, sorry, not that one. Wesley mocking Humperdinck, and the Ancient Boer mocking Buttercup. So
again, it makes you wonder to what degree that was inspired by what you see in Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Just weird similarities where it's like that's kind of oddly close to.
Remind me of the first part of the Monty Python.
The French Taunter. So he's like, wine. I can't remember the lines.
Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelled of elderberries.
Gotcha. And then Wesley saying that.
He's slapping his head and doing the gestures.
And then doing the rat and spitting out the Bronx cheer and all that. So
okay.
Yeah, it was. And I think that. Oh gosh, I had a point and I lost it. So.
Okay, then there's I'm Not a Witch, I'm Not a Witch from Monty Python, and I'm Not a Witch, I'm Your Wife from Princess Bride. And then Sword Fight with lots of talking, Black Knight and the Man in Black, which is an interesting parallel. They're both wearing black for those. But,
that's very interesting. It's a very common motif in a lot of the medieval imagery, the notion of the figure in black, and it's
bad guy wears black.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least the man of mystery wears black.
Yeah,
how we associate that color with it. So one of the things that also stands out for me in terms of comparison is how iconic both these films are. I mean, people they talk about Monty Python in a lot of fans they watch the show, but a lot of people who first encounter Monty Python do so through the Holy Grail, and it's become this film that returns to and has this enormous influence in projects like Blackadder and so forth. And Princess Bride's the same way. I mean, people talk about how encountering it becomes one of their favorite films. They return to it, and it's casts its own influence as well. I mean, these were both very much films that set a tone of style and really became touchstones for the generation of people who saw them.
And it's interesting. I'm thinking of maybe like the influences on writing for this, on the similarities is maybe a subconscious one. They weren't intentionally putting in these things, but it's just, I mean, for me, like Monty Python is just so part of my psyche that that's kind of what my humor style is. I'm not saying I can do Monty Python, but it's in my DNA basically.
When you're reaching for humor, there's Monty Python to draw upon. Yeah.
Mm.
And it's like a second nature type thing. Like you don't even think, oh, Monty Python. Although I did grab from that Monty Python trick to do that thing for my movie. But okay, so then differences. Structure. Monty Python has kind of that. The only thing holding it together is the Holy Grail. Like the rest of it is just random nonsense.
And that doesn't even come in until like a third of the way into the movie.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it comes a little late with act structure. Like 15 minutes is when it should appear. But in fact, I looked it up right when they had the scene where God tells them to get the Holy Grail. Is like 24 minutes, I think.
That's right, because he was King Arthur was just looking for Camelot at the beginning.
Yeah,
he was on a recruiting drive.
Recruiting drive.
It was introducing the knights, basically.
Gotcha.
That's what Act 1 was.
Which is kind of funny because the only knight you're really introduced to in detail is Bedivere, because they just instantly throw in, Galahad, Lancelot, they invent Sir Robin, and then of course there's Sir Not in the movie.
Yeah. And then Act 3 is very much cut short. Like they do have an Act 3. It's like going up to the French that they don't know is the French castle. Castle Largue, and then the French taunters taunt them again, and then they go back. Okay, so then structure-wise for Princess Bride, it's pretty standard structure for a movie. Like if you were to sit down and break down how it works out. Princess Bride is kind of surprisingly close to what you should be doing, except for the end. And it's got that strong enough through line of the Holy Grail that it holds it together. But they do it much more strongly and by the book with Princess Bride, where the only thing that kind of surprises me about the structure is that the main character is not present for the first part of Act 2. And this isn't a bad thing. Like, structure works. Like, it's there for a reason. And anyway, so that's my nerdy rant about structure.
It's a fascinating comparison because it really shows how you could have the same, broad setting, and how you can have these two two movies which are very different in their storytelling approaches. And the Princess Bride might be the more traditional, but you can, and what you see with Monty Python, I wonder if it's the harder one to pull off.
I would say so. It looked really
I think it holds together despite itself because it's got a strong MacGuffin through line, and that might be, this is just conjecture, but it could be why it's the more successful of the Monty Python movies, because it actually has that strong structural thing holding it together, where even when you go off on these random tangents, you're going to come back to the Holy Grail through line. Yeah. So.
Whereas the comparison that stands out for me most is Meaning of Life, which is a film that, it's an example where I love the parts, but it really doesn't cohere very well. It really is this randomness that is tied to this, not a MacGuffin, but just this idea of we're going to explore the meaning of life. And
just pretty broad. Like that's not great for structure. You need something very measurable.
And it doesn't even really come up all the time. I mean, you have like this, the scene where you have the Michael Palin, the drill instructor talking about marching up and down the square, or the sergeant, excuse me, marching up and down the square. Not once is it about meaning of life beyond maybe the idea that we don't want to spend our lives marching up and down squares. Yeah. So that's where, of course, that was one of their later efforts when I think they were ready to move on, do other things. So, but yeah, I mean, it is fascinating how they really make it work. And it's difficult to imagine a better MacGuffin than the Holy Grail.
Yeah, that's been used several times.
As you were saying earlier, yeah.
And when it's a real life thing that's got that extra draw of I want to know what that's about. But then there's, I'm just going to go over these really quick because we've kind of covered them. The main characters for Monty Python and the Holy Grail, it's an ensemble piece, which the best thing I can compare this to that I can think of right off the top of my head is Ocean's 11. Like you have them all have the same goal. That's how you do an ensemble piece. Mm-hmm. So you're not just going a million different directions. They all, like in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, it's we need to find the Grail. In Ocean's 11, it's we need to get into the vault and get the money. They all should have that specific goal, and that's how you do an ensemble piece. Mm-hmm. They can do whatever random nonsense they want to do, but they've got that strong thing tying them together where it's not just the one character, but a bunch of characters. And then for Princess Bride, I think it was Wesley. I think that's probably the strongest case we have for the main character. Indigo, we kind of jump over to him and at the first part of Act 2, where he's kind of the one we're latching onto, but it's kind of to hand him back off to, or hand the main character role back off to Wesley as he beats him, and then he beats the other people. Okay. Then the humor style. There's British humor for Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And then US/Jewish humor is what I have for for Princess Bride. But it's kind of got, I don't know, it's not like a Mel Brooks type thing for sure. And it's like,
it's not the Borscht Belt, is what I think you're getting at. That's sort of that very broad humor.
Yeah. And I think half of the flavor of this movie is just that it's an earnest fairy tale. And then they just put kind of a wry humor on top of it. So it's the rye bread for the earnest fairy tale sandwich.
You mean the mutton sandwich?
The muttons.
Oh,
The
so good with
BMT.
the mutton. Just, that's the right amount of, very lean.
Okay, so yeah, that's my notes for Criss Cross. Anybody got anything else?
The one the one final one. This is more of a comparison. Is how both of them are kind of set around the notions of royalty. It's not just the Middle Ages we focus on, but specifically the figures of royalty. It's something that Kevin Costner's character points out in Bull Durham, which is that when people talk about being reincarnated, the people they used to be in the past, and how they're always the nobility. Nobody's ever a peasant.
Yeah.
And how we always seem to center the stories about the Middle Ages around these high and mighty figures, probably because they haven't got crap all over them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I would just like to add that I want to say they are similar in medieval times, I suppose, but even then, it still feels like a distant era because in Princess Bride, you kind of see the ancient boer and the rest of the peasants with these. They're all like watered down compared to the princess, and then versus the other Monty Python universe, there's maidens and I don't know. I want to compare them to be the same medieval, but they're just definitely different alternate universes. I want to say, yeah. That's all I can really say.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, they're more open in Princess Bride, I think, because the foundation ultimately is not a historical setting. It's very much a fantasy book.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Where they're kind of doing that, but I think that's very true.
Yeah. But I want to say all the points you made are pretty accurate.
Oh, thanks. So I think it's interesting. Like I always thought of it as fantasy, and then I didn't realize till like late teens or something that they were using real names of places and like Aristotle and Socrates and
Vincini being Sicilian, Montoya being
Sicilian,
Spanish, that kind of thing. Yeah.
So it's some version of our world, but a very fantasy version of it. But okay. So our star reviews for Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Mark. 5 stars.
I mean, I can accept that Life of Brian is objectively a better movie, and that maybe Holy Grail deserves 4.5 stars because of that. But I constantly go on about how I don't like to do half stars. So if I'm gonna move it to 4 or 5, it's gonna be a 5.
Cool.
I feel so bad.
No, that's okay.
This is probably just me, and I'm probably going to get heat for it, but I want to say a 3.5 for Monty Python. Only because I think I just have to rewatch it, but the humor is there. I think there was maybe some things that I missed, but it can definitely go to a 4, like, once I rewatch it again, because it's not horrible. There was just some things that I think I want to say I missed.
It may be an acquired taste.
Yeah, it definitely is an acquired taste.
Yeah. Okay, so I got to do 5 too. This is a staple of my growing up. It's in my DNA, like I said. And I haven't done comedy in a while, but I'm about to write a new comedy, and I hope this finds its way into there. Just that sensibility. But
I think. I mean, I agree with that. I share that approach. For me, it was. I almost felt it was not necessary to rewatch it because, like you, it was so much a part of growing up. I encountered it at a certain time. I kept revisiting it. It's something that I have a very it's kind of intertwined with kind of my memory of, growing up, my influences and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely influences it. It's something we're coming at it, and I feel like we're reaching a point where we are getting distant from Monty Python, where it's now much more of a period thing in the same way that, say, maybe like Chap movies were a generation previously, where people might have grown up watching City Lights and Great Dictator and The Kid and all the shorts and all that stuff, but now it's kind of like, oh, those are funny, but I mean, they're kind of, we run into them at a various point. Chaplin's an icon. We recognize the persona, but we don't actually watch them anymore. So
Yeah.
Which is sad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think a lot of people are passing them on to their kids, but and we're passing it on to Velia.
So
Okay, so our star reviews of The Princess Bride. You want to start first?
Sure. It's not, without a doubt, a 5 out of 5.
Cool.
Always been a fan. Only because, I just have like very fond memories also, like you guys with Monty Python. I have just visualizations when I was growing up of like my grandmother's TV set, and then just seeing the man in black run in the horizons, and then just the scene where they're at the ravine and like they're running from, or they're at, like, Princess Buttercup is in her red dress, and just all that is just a little nostalgic. But also, as I got older and I found this movie again, watching the story and seeing it, unfold, you get a lot of I want to say just lessons, and also just that whole fairy tale aspect of the concept of a fairy tale is like they're supposed to teach you a lesson anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the story is just well written, and Inigo and his revenge story and how it connects. I see no flaws except for the ones that you pointed out that I was like, I didn't notice that either.
a couple holes. So.
Yeah.
Which I'm not big on plot holes. It's not a big deal to me, but
Yeah.
I think plot holes for me are it's like it's like I almost think of them as potholes in the sense that the more I drive over them, the bigger they get. But in spite of that, Princess Bride is also a 5-star movie for me. It's in that category of films that I think are perfect date films in the sense that both people can get something out of it even if they have like different interests, different tastes. I mean, if you like comedy, if you like romance, you like action, it's so nicely blended together in a way that you can. I mean, you really have to. Monty Python is very much an acquired taste, and that's true in for really all their material. I mean, it's funny, but it's also a very particular type of humor. Whereas Princess Bride, there's something there for everyone, and it's all age groups. There's stuff that the kids can enjoy. There's stuff adults get out of it. It's got the wordplay. It's got it's got a bit of physical humor, and it's just very nicely done.
Okay, well, I don't have much to say about it because you guys basically said exactly what I was going to say. But yeah, 5 stars. Yeah, this is a staple too growing up. I remember like my mom and my aunt quoting lines from it and just laughing like hilariously at it. And I was at an age where I didn't understand what was, and I don't think I'd seen it yet, but it's kind of, some of the humor in Princess Bride is a little more adult, not like inappropriate, but like just adult level understanding. But anyway, as I grew up and got into the movie, like it's become a favorite of like, you can't just, it's one of those that can't be deleted from your mind.
And that's what amazes me about the movie is the fact that as great as it is, and it's a consensus 5-star for us, it was not successful when it came out.
Yeah. It wasn't until VHS that it really...
Yeah.
Really?
It's one of the, there's certain films that, and this is where you sometimes see the cult label affixed to them as the ones that end up becoming bigger hits as time goes on. But But it's just, you watch it nowadays, and sometimes it's like, I can see why people didn't get it at the time. I just do not see that for The Princess Bride. I do not understand why it was that people didn't fall over themselves. In a way, I'm grateful because, inevitably, whenever a film is successful, they instantly start talking about, release, another film with the same name, only with a Roman numeral at the end.
Yeah.
and I like the fact that this is kind of its own thing, and that we're not going to do Princess Bride 2, The Revenge of Humperdinck or some nonsense like that. It doesn't need it, and I don't want it. I'm perfectly happy with The Princess Bride. But it just, how did people not get it back in 1987?
I think it might have been the marketing. I can't remember what the trailers were, but maybe they just, it's so many different things they didn't know how to sell it, or maybe the taste back then, they're like, I don't want to see some fantasy thing, or like they didn't know that there's a lot of humor in there too, or not fantasy, but fairy tale.
Like maybe if Wesley and Humperdinck fought it out at the top of Nakatomi Tower Plaza, it would have been a bigger film.
Yeah, maybe.
So that was the big hit of 1987, as I recall. So
Yeah.
Which is why we have so many god-awful Die Hard movies nowadays. Editorialized. Well,
So you said that they were planning to do a remake of this movie?
I read somewhere that I heard that there's talk of it.
Oh.
And it's interesting because I think it's because you're probably talking about a generation of studio executives who grew up with the movie.
Yeah.
And so they're probably like, hey, we should redo it, and which I don't think is necessary, but if they do, maybe at the very least they'll make Buttercup more of a protagonist. So
Yeah, I see. No, I hope they don't. It's one of the movies that I'm like, please don't change it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't need to
Just do a version with the Muppets and then forget
exactly.
about it.
We can make that work perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Anyway.
Well, cool.
Cool. So, Zelia, did you have anything that you wanted to plug?
Well, currently I did land a role in Barbara Davis's Medusa Jones short.
Oh, nice.
Yes, so I'll be in
I
that.
might be editing that one, so
I wouldn't doubt it.
we won't see each other, but I'll see a lot of you.
Okay, cool. You do great editing.
I'll be on set doing DIT. So.
Oh, okay, cool.
Anyway,
well, that's one of my projects currently, and I am auditioning for some other roles, mostly for a theater group. And then I am still in the Renaissance Festival, so you guys can see me as Gretchen Wieners, Baroness of Fetch, at the Renaissance.
Cool.
In Arizona.
in Arizona, yeah. Specify that one.
Yes.
Okay, so our next episode is going to be a special Father's Day episode. It'll be Frequency and Interstellar, and our guest will be my brother, Joseph Wilson, who actually just had a kid. I think he's 18 years. I think he's about 18 months now, so it'll be really interesting. I want to have it where I'll watch with my dad and he'll watch with his son, and you can watch with your son, and then we'll have that interesting 3-tier father-son experience.
Yeah.
So
that's actually really cute.
yeah, thanks. And then me and Joseph can fight it out over who's the best son. Okay. And that's it for today's Crisscross Cinema podcast. Thanks for listening.
But you wouldn't clap yet, because making something disappear isn't enough. You have to bring it